The Queen in the Shadows: How a Mafia Wife Destroyed Her Husband's Empire. In one night, she spent 12 years building his throne. She spent one night tearing it down. Alessia Moretti wasn't supposed to survive what her husband did to her. Dante Russo, the most feared boss in New York, had already picked out her replacement. A younger woman, a public wife, a queen to stand beside him while Alessia stayed buried in the shadows where he'd kept her for over a decade. He forgot one thing. Every deal he ever made, every enemy he ever buried, every dollar he ever laundered, she knew. She built it. And tonight, in front of every family in the city, she was going to burn it all down with a smile on her face. Before we go deeper into this story, if you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story has traveled. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me until the very end, because what Alessia does in the final minutes is something no one saw coming. Not her husband, not his enemies, not even her. Now let's begin. The phone buzzed against the marble countertop at 11:47 p.m., and Alessia Moretti would remember that exact time for the rest of her life. She was standing barefoot in the kitchen of the brownstone on East 74th, pouring a second glass of red wine she didn't really want, wearing one of Dante's old dress shirts because the house was cold and the heat hadn't kicked on yet. The shirt still smelled like him: cedar, tobacco, the faint chemical ghost of the cologne he'd worn for 20 years and refused to change. She had her hair pulled back in a loose knot, no makeup, reading glasses pushed up on top of her head. On the counter beside the wine bottle sat a stack of ledgers she'd been going through for 3 hours, the kind of ledgers that, if the wrong person ever found them, would put her husband in a federal prison for the rest of his natural life. She was 37 years old. She had been married to Dante Russo for 12 of those years, and in 12 years she had never once received a text message at that hour from Luca Bianchi. Luca was Dante's underboss. His cousin, technically, though the Russos and the Bianchis had been tangled up in each other's bloodlines for 4 generations, and nobody really kept track anymore. Luca was the one who drove Dante to meetings, the one who stood outside restaurant bathrooms while Dante made deals inside, the one who on the night of Alessia's wedding had pulled her aside in the coat room of the plaza and told her, in a whisper thick with whiskey, "Listen to me, Piccola. You are a smart girl, too smart for this life. If you ever need out, you come to me, not him, me." She had laughed at him that night. She had been 25 and in love and wearing a dress that cost more than her mother's car. What did she need an exit for? 12 years later, Luca's name was lighting up her phone at 11:47 at night, and she knew, before she even picked it up, she knew that whatever was inside that message was going to end the life she had built. She picked up the phone. She read it. She read it again. Then she set the phone down on the marble, very carefully, like it was something that might break, and she stood there in her husband's shirt with the wine going warm in her glass, and she felt the whole architecture of her life fold in on itself like a paper house in the rain. The message was 4 lines long. "Alessia, you need to hear this from me first. He's putting her forward at the Montalto gathering. She's going to be at his side. Publicly. I'm sorry. I tried to stop it. I love you like a sister. Burn this phone after. Her. Her." She didn't need a name. She already knew the name. Camila Vega, 26. Colombian father, Italian mother, the kind of face that made men in restaurants forget their own children's birthdays. She had appeared in Dante's orbit about 8 months ago, originally introduced as the daughter of a family friend who needed guidance. Dante had put her up in an apartment in Tribeca. For business, he said, so she could be close to the office, so she could help with the legitimate side of things, the real estate, the restaurants, the things Alessia had built from nothing over a decade because she had a master's in finance from Columbia, and her husband couldn't balance a checkbook if the numbers were written in crayon. Alessia had known. Of course she had known. A woman knows. A woman always knows. She had told herself she didn't care because men like Dante, men in this life, they all had their Camilas. It was the air they breathed. You took it or you didn't survive. Her own mother had lived through 3 of them before the cancer took her, and every one of those women had come and gone like weather, and her mother had stayed the wife until the day they put her in the ground. That was the deal. That was the arrangement. He could have his appetites. He could have his distractions. But the name on the marriage certificate, the name on the mailbox, the name whispered with respect at the tables where the real decisions got made, that was hers. Russo. Moretti. Russo. That was the one thing he could never give away, and now he was giving it away. She's going to be at his side. Publicly. Alessia picked up the wine glass. She drank the entire thing in 3 swallows. She set it down. She walked, barefoot, across the cold travertine tile of the kitchen to the window that looked out over the back garden where the hydrangeas she'd planted the first year of their marriage were dying in their stone planters, because the gardener had gotten lazy, and nobody had noticed because nobody ever looked at anything in this house except her. She looked at her reflection in the black glass. She didn't cry. That was the thing she remembered most clearly afterward. She didn't cry. She had expected, at some point in her life, to cry over Dante Russo. She had prepared for it. She had imagined it, over the years, in idle moments, what she would look like, what she would say, how she would hold the phone with shaking hands. And now the moment had arrived and her hands were perfectly still. What she felt wasn't sadness. Sadness was going to come later, at 3 in the morning, and it was going to eat her alive for about 40 minutes in an upstairs bathroom before she pulled herself together. What she felt right then in the kitchen was something quieter and much worse. She felt stupid. She felt like a woman who had been playing chess for 12 years against an opponent she had respected and had just realized, this late, this embarrassingly late, that he had never understood the rules of the game. He thought he could replace her. He actually thought he could replace her. Mrs. Russo? She turned. Rosa, the housekeeper, was standing in the archway between the kitchen and the hall, wrapped in a wool cardigan, her gray hair loose down her back. Rosa had been with the house since before Alessia married into it. Rosa had, in some ways, raised Dante. Rosa missed nothing. "You all right?" Rosa said. Her accent was Sicilian, thick, warm as bread. "I'm fine, Rosa." "You don't look fine." I said I'm fine. Rosa stood there for a long moment watching her. Then she walked, slow, deliberate, her slippers whispering on the tile, to the counter, picked up the wine bottle, filled Alicia's glass back up to the rim, and said, without looking at her, "Whatever he did, Piccola, don't let him see it on your face. Whatever you do next. Whatever you become. Don't let him see it on your face until it is already done. Capisci?" Alessia looked at her. Rosa had been married once, to a man in this life. He had died in 1992, supposedly of a heart attack, though there were stories. Rosa had never remarried. Rosa had never spoken about him, not in 12 years, not once, until now. "Capisco," Alicia said. Rosa nodded. She patted Alessia's cheek with one cool, papery hand. Then she turned and shuffled back down the hall toward her room and did not look back. Alessia stood alone in the kitchen for another minute. Then she picked up the phone. She did not burn it. Not yet. She opened Luca's message. She read it one more time, memorizing the exact wording. Then she deleted it. Then she emptied the deleted folder. Then she opened her contacts and, with a hand that had become extraordinarily, unnaturally calm, she began to scroll. Dante Russo did not come home that night. This was not unusual. He kept an apartment in Midtown, a place he called the office, which was where he went when meetings ran late or when he didn't want to explain why his shirt smelled like someone else's perfume. Alessia had stopped asking about the apartment in their second year of marriage. It was the kind of question you only asked once. What she had not known, until tonight, was that Camilla Vega had a key to that apartment. She knew now. She knew because she had spent the 4 hours between Luca's message and the rising sun working through every account, every property record, every cell phone bill she had access to, which was all of them, because she was the one who paid the bills, because she was the one who understood money, because Dante had always joked that his wife could make a dollar do things God never intended. God. She stopped herself. She didn't want to think about God right now. She didn't want to think about anything that wasn't concrete and useful. She wanted to think about facts. Fact. Camilla Vega had been issued a key card to 220 Central Park South, apartment 47B, on March 3rd of the previous year. That was 8 months ago. Fact. There had been 47 transactions on a Black American Express card registered to one of Dante's shell companies, all of them originating from stores Alessia had never shopped at in her life. Bergdorf, Bulgari, a lingerie store on Madison that Alessia had always considered beneath her, totaling just over $312,000. Fact. The Montalto gathering Luca had mentioned was not just a dinner. It was the annual sit-down between the 5 oldest families on the East Coast, held every February at the Montalto Estate in Westchester. It was the single most important social event in their world. It was where men brought the women they wanted the world to respect. For 12 years, Dante had attended alone. Every time. He had told Alessia it was because the gathering wasn't safe for wives. He had told her it was tradition, old rules, men only at the table. She had believed him. She had believed him for 12 years because she had loved him and because she had no reason not to, and because she was, apparently, the biggest fool in New York City. It was not men only. It never had been. The wives went. All of them. She had found photos buried deep in the phones of bodyguards she had access to through the household security system of every Montalto gathering for the last 10 years. And in every one of those photos, at the arm of every other boss in the 5 families, was a woman, a wife, a public partner. In every photo of Dante, he was alone. He had hidden her for 12 years, not protected her, hidden her. And now he was going to walk into the Montalto estate in 3 weeks, with Camila Vega on his arm, and he was going to introduce her to every man who mattered in their world as his. Alessia closed the laptop. The sun was coming up over the East River. She could see it turning the water the color of a bruise. She went upstairs. She showered. She dried her hair. She put on a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark jeans and a pair of pearl earrings her mother had given her the day she married Dante. She put on her wedding ring, which she had taken off to shower and which she had, for 1 second while holding it, considered throwing out the window. She didn't throw it out the window. She put it back on her finger, because she was going to need it. Hook. Dante came home at 9:14 a.m. She heard his car in the drive first, the black Maybach, the one she'd picked out for him because he'd wanted a Bentley, and she'd told him a Bentley made you look like a man who was trying. Then his key in the door. Then his voice in the foyer, low and rough from whatever night he'd had, saying good morning to Rosa in Italian the way he always did. Alessia was sitting at the breakfast table with a cup of black coffee and a copy of the Wall Street Journal open to the real estate section. She was reading an article about commercial vacancies in Midtown. Or she was pretending to read it. Her eyes had been on the same sentence for 6 minutes. Hey, he came in. He was in his shirt sleeves, his coat over his arm, his tie loose. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been up all night doing things he shouldn't have been doing and thought he'd gotten away with it. He bent down and kissed the top of her head, and she smelled the perfume on him. Jasmine, something young, something that hadn't been near her side of the closet in a long, long time, and she did not let her face move. Don't let him see it. Long night? She said. He went to the coffee pot. He poured himself a cup. He leaned against the counter. Meetings. That thing with the Albanians, it's getting out of hand. Joey can't close it. I had to sit in. You up early? Couldn't sleep. Anything wrong? She looked up at him over the top of the paper. She made her face into the face of the woman who had loved him for 12 years. She made it gentle. She made it a little tired. She made it very slightly worried, the way a wife would be worried about a husband who didn't sleep enough. No, she said. Nothing's wrong. He held her eyes for a second. She held his right back. He smiled. The smile was small and tired and familiar, and for one hideous moment she remembered, with her whole body, why she had fallen in love with him. She remembered being 24, meeting him at a restaurant in Little Italy where she was working the bar through her master's program, and the way he had looked at her the first time, not like he wanted her, the way most men wanted her, but like he was trying to solve her. Like she was a problem he wanted to spend the rest of his life working on. She had loved being that problem. She had loved being his. She had loved him, she realized now, much, much more than he had ever loved her. I'm going to shower, he said. You eat? Not yet. Tell Rosa to do the eggs the way I like. I'll be down in 20. Okay. He walked out of the kitchen. He walked up the stairs. She listened to his footsteps all the way up and down the hall and into their bedroom and then into the bathroom. And when she heard the shower start, she stood up and walked calmly to the powder room off the foyer and closed the door and locked it and slid down the wall until she was sitting on the tile and put her face in her hands and did not make a sound. She sat there for 11 minutes. Then she got up. She washed her face. She redid her mascara. She went back to the kitchen. She told Rosa to do his eggs. She served him breakfast. She smiled at him across the table. She asked him about his meetings. She listened to him lie about the Albanians. And somewhere behind her face, in a room her husband had never been allowed to enter, she started building the thing that was going to end him. The first call she made was to her sister. Not her actual sister. Alessia's actual sister, Gianna, lived in Connecticut with a dentist and 2 children and had not spoken to Alessia in 4 years because Gianna had once said at a Thanksgiving dinner that Dante Russo was a criminal and a thug and you are going to die young because of him. And Alessia had told her to get out of her house and never come back. Gianna had obliged. They hadn't spoken since. Sometimes, late at night, Alessia thought about calling her. She never did. The sister she called was Sofia Colombo. Sofia was not her sister by blood. Sofia was her sister by circumstance, the wife of Vincent Colombo, who ran the Colombo family out of Brooklyn. Sofia was 42. Sofia had 3 children. Sofia had been, for the last 8 years, Alessia's closest friend in a life that did not make friendships easy. They had met at a charity event at the Met and had recognized something in each other immediately, the specific loneliness of women who had married into this life and who were smarter than anyone around them gave them credit for. Sofia picked up on the second ring. "You're up early." "I need to see you." A pause. Sofia was good at pauses. Sofia could hear an entire marriage in a pause. "Coffee?" Sofia said. "Not public." Another pause. "Come to the house. Vincent's in Miami. The kids are at school until 3. 40 minutes. Bring me a cannoli. Ferraras. The pistachio." "Sofia." 40 minutes, Sofia said. "And Alessia, breathe." Alessia hung up. She went upstairs. Dante was asleep now, face down in the pillow, one bare arm thrown across her side of the bed. She stood in the doorway and looked at him for a long moment. The man she had chosen. The man she had built. The man who, at this moment, was dreaming about a 26-year-old in a Tribeca apartment and did not know that his wife had already started digging his grave. She walked to her side of the closet. She pulled down a handbag, the black Hermes, the one he had bought her for their 10th anniversary. She filled it with 3 things: a burner phone she kept taped to the underside of the top shelf, a flash drive she kept inside a jewelry box she had told him held her grandmother's rosary, and a stack of documents she had, over the past 6 hours, printed from the study and slid into a manila folder. She closed the closet. She went downstairs. She told Rosa she was going to see Sofia and would be back by lunch. Rosa looked up from the stove. Rosa's eyes were very dark and very steady. "Piccola," Rosa said softly. "Yes?" "Whatever you are doing." "Yes?" "Do it well." Alessia stopped in the doorway. She did not turn around. If she turned around, she was going to fall apart. And she could not afford to fall apart. Not today. Not for 21 more days. "I intend to, Rosa," she said. And she walked out. It says, Sofia Colombo lived in a townhouse on 63rd that had originally been built for a steel magnate in 1908 and which Vincent had bought at the bottom of the market in 2009. The house had 6 bedrooms, a private elevator, and a dining room that could seat 16. None of that was what Alessia had come for. What Alessia had come for was the garden. The garden was at the back of the house, walled off on all 4 sides by 12-foot brick, invisible from the street, invisible from the neighboring buildings, and most importantly, invisible to every listening device that the FBI, the DEA, and 4 different rival families had spent the last decade trying to plant in Vincent Colombo's life. Sofia had had the garden swept once a week, every week, for the last 6 years. You could say things in Sofia's garden that you could not say anywhere else in New York. They sat on wrought iron chairs under a dead rose trellis. It was cold. Sofia had wrapped them both in wool blankets and set a thermos of coffee between them and a plate of the pistachio cannolis Alessia had stopped for on the way over. Sofia had poured the coffee. Sofia had lit a cigarette, even though she had quit smoking 6 years ago. Sofia was, Alessia realized, scared. "Tell me," Sofia said. Alessia told her. She told her about Luca's message. She told her about Camila Vega. She told her about the Montalto gathering and the $300,000 credit card and the key card to the apartment in Central Park South. She told her about the 12 years and the hiding and the lie about men only at the table. She did not cry. Sofia listened. Sophia did not interrupt. Sophia smoked her cigarette down to the filter, then lit another one, then smoked that one halfway, and only then did she speak. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay. First thing, you are not going to do anything stupid." "I wasn't planning to." "I know you weren't. I am saying it out loud for my own benefit," Sophia tapped Ash. "Second thing, I need you to listen to me very carefully." "I'm listening." "Vincent does not like Dante." Alessia looked up. Sophia was looking at the dead rose trellis. Her face was very still. "Vincent has never liked Dante," Sophia said. "For 10 years, Vincent has watched your husband be rude to his wife, rude to his men, rude to the older bosses who deserve respect. And Vincent has stayed quiet because Vincent is an old-school man and he believes in peace between the families. But Vincent is not stupid. And Vincent has been watching. And Vincent has a great deal of respect for you, Kara. A very great deal of respect. He has told me, more than once, that he believes the Russo organization runs on you and would collapse without you." Sophia, I am telling you this because in about 3 weeks at the Montalto estate, there is going to be a gathering at which Vincent Colombo will be present, along with every other boss on the East Coast. And I'm telling you that if you are planning what I think you are planning, my husband is not going to stand in your way. Alessia was very quiet. Then she said, "Is he going to help?" Sophia took a long drag of her cigarette. "That depends," she said, "on what you bring to the table." Alessia set her coffee cup down. She reached into the Hermes bag. She took out the manila folder. She took out the flash drive. She set them both on the wrought iron table between them. "I brought," she said, "everything." Sophia looked at the flash drive. She looked at the folder. She looked at Alessia. Then Sophia Colombo, wife of Vincent, mother of 3, former dental hygienist from Bay Ridge, reached across the table and took Alessia's hand. She squeezed it so hard it hurt. "Oh, Piccola," Sophia said. "He has no idea what he married, does he?" "No," Alessia said. "He's going to find out." "Yes. It's going to be a pleasure to watch." She stayed at Sophia's for another 2 hours. They went through the folder. They went through the flash drive on a laptop Sophia kept in a wall safe behind a Modigliani print. A laptop that had never been connected to the internet and never would be. Sophia, who had spent 20 years listening to her husband's business and who had a memory like a bank vault, asked questions Alessia had not anticipated. What were the margins on the construction contracts? How was the money moving through the Staten Island pier? Who was the contact at the bank in Nassau? What did Dante have on the councilman from the Bronx, and where was it kept? And who else had access? Alessia answered every question. She answered them because she knew every answer. She knew every answer because she had, for 12 years, been the woman who kept the books, moved the money, negotiated with the banks, wrote the contracts, reviewed the legal filings, and managed the legitimate businesses that made the illegitimate ones possible. She had not done this because Dante had asked her to. She had done this because Dante couldn't. Dante was a man who could command a room, who could break a knee, who could look another man in the eye and know, inside of 30 seconds, whether that man was going to lie to him. But Dante could not read a balance sheet. Dante did not understand compound interest. Dante, to this day, thought LLC stood for something vaguely French. Alessia had been, for 12 years, the brain behind every dollar Dante Russo had ever made. He had never told anyone. Neither had she. "Alessia," Sophia said, finally, when they had gone through everything, "can I ask you something?" "Ask?" "Do you still love him?" Alessia looked at her. The question caught her sideways. She had not expected it. She had been ready for tactical questions, strategic questions, questions about evidence and leverage and what she was willing to risk. She had not been ready for Sophia to ask her, gently, across a garden table on a cold February morning, whether she still loved her husband. She thought about it. She thought about Dante at 29, in a bad suit, telling her at a bar in Little Italy that she had the most serious eyes he had ever seen on a human being. She thought about Dante at 32, the night his father died, sitting on the floor of the funeral home in his shirt sleeves and crying into her lap while she stroked his hair and didn't say a word. She thought about Dante at 35, walking her through the brownstone on East 74th the day they closed on it, telling her this was going to be their forever house. This was where they were going to raise their children, and she had not told him because she could not bear to tell him that she had already seen the specialist and that children were not going to happen for them, that her body had decided against it, and that he was going to have to settle for just her. He had never asked afterward about the children. She had always wondered in some deep place she never let herself look, whether Camila Vega would give him children, whether that was what this was really about. I don't know, Alessia said. Sophia nodded. That's an honest answer. It might not be a useful answer. It doesn't have to be useful. It has to be honest. Sophia lit her third cigarette. Here's what I think. I think you loved a man who never existed. I think you built him in your head out of the pieces of him that were actually there, plus a lot of pieces he was never going to have. And I think, Kara, that the man you actually married is going to stand up at the Montalto gathering in 3 weeks and introduce another woman to the 5 families. And the only question that matters now is whether you are going to let him do that, or whether you are going to walk into that room first and take back every single thing he ever took from you. Alessia did not answer for a long time. Then she said, I'm going to walk into the room. Good. And I'm going to take back everything. Good. And Sophia, yes? I'm going to need your husband. Sophia smiled. It was not a nice smile. Piccola, she said, my husband is going to be delighted. When Alessia got home, Dante was awake. He was in the study. The door was half open. She could hear him on the phone, speaking in the fast, clipped Italian he used with men he didn't want Rosa to understand. She stood in the hallway for a moment, her Hermes bag over her shoulder, and she listened. No, I already told her. She's fine with it. She understands. Alessia is not a stupid woman. She knows how this works. A pause. Yes. At the Montalto thing, I already talked to Polly. It's handled. Camilla will come in on my arm. Alessia stays home. A pause. Because she's not well, that's why. She hasn't been well. Everybody in the family knows. Her nerves, you know how she gets. It's better for everybody if she stays home. Alessia stood in the hallway. She did not move. She did not breathe. Her nerves. You know how she gets? She had never, in her entire life, had a problem with her nerves. She had never, in her entire life, been less than completely composed in any room she had ever entered. She had sat through IRS audits without flinching. She had sat across the table from men who wanted her husband dead, and she had poured them espresso. Her nerves were made of piano wire. He was lying about her. He was telling his men that his wife was unwell. He was preparing the ground for her removal, not just from his bed, but from his life. He was going to present Camilla at the Montalto gathering, and he was going to let the story spread that his wife had been unstable for years, that he had been patient, that everyone would understand. He was burying her alive, while she was still in the house, while he was still smiling at her across the breakfast table. Something happened inside Alessia Moretti in that hallway. She would never be able to describe it, afterward, to anyone, not even to Sophia. But it happened, and it was permanent, and it was the moment, the precise moment, that the woman she had been for the previous 12 years stopped existing. The woman in that hallway was not a wife anymore. The woman in that hallway was a weapon that had not yet chosen its target. She took a slow, quiet step backward, then another. She walked silently down the hall, through the living room, into the kitchen. She set her bag down on the counter. She took off her coat. She hung it on the back of a chair. Rosa was at the stove, stirring something. Rosa did not look up. Piccola, Rosa said. Yes? I am making pasta alla norma for lunch, your husband's favorite. That's lovely. I have also, Rosa said, still not looking up, been cleaning the house all morning. I cleaned the study. While I was cleaning, I found a phone in the drawer of his desk. A phone I have never seen before. I put it back. I did not touch it, but I made a note of the number on the back, which I have written down and placed in an envelope for you under the sugar canister, which you may do with as you wish. Alessia looked at the sugar canister. She looked at Rosa. Rosa stirred the sauce. Rosa, Alessia said. How long have you known? Rosa sighed. She set the spoon down. She turned to look at Alessia. Her face, in the morning light through the kitchen window, was every one of her 71 years. Piccola, she said, I have worked in this house for 46 years. I cleaned his mother's floors. I washed his father's collars. I held him the day he was born. I love that boy like he was mine. I have also known, since the first day you walked through that door, that you were worth 10 of him. I have known, since the first week of your marriage, that he was going to do something stupid someday, because men like him always do. I have been waiting for the day. I am sorry it came. I am more sorry that you are the one who has to fix it. But I am here. I have always been here. And the envelope under the sugar canister is only the first thing I have for you. Alessia did not cry. She did not cry. She put her arms around Rosa and pressed her face into the old woman's shoulder, and Rosa smelled like flower and bay leaves and clean laundry, and Rosa held her very tight, and neither of them said anything for a long time. Then Alessia stepped back. She picked up the sugar canister. She took out the envelope. She opened it. There was a phone number written on a folded slip of paper in Rosa's careful, old-fashioned script. Underneath the phone number, Rosa had written in Italian, Il re che dimentica la sua regina non merita il trono. The king who forgets his queen does not deserve the throne. Alessia folded the paper back up. She put it in her pocket. She walked to the stove. She picked up the spoon. She stirred the pasta alla norma. Rosa, she said, tell me everything you know. And Rosa, across the stove in the warm kitchen on East 74th, began to talk. Outside in the study, Dante Russo was still on the phone, still lying about his wife, still believing, because he had always believed, that he was the most dangerous person in his own house. He was wrong about that. He had always been wrong about that. He was just about to find out. Rosa talked for an hour and 12 minutes. She talked while she finished the sauce, while she set the table, while the water came to a boil and the pasta went in and came out again, and Alessia stood beside her and listened the way you listen to a priest in confession, which is to say, without interruption, without judgment, and with the full understanding that some of what you are about to hear will change the rest of your life. Rosa had been watching Dante since he was in diapers. Rosa had watched him as a boy, as a teenager, as a young man who used to bring home girls from the Bronx and charm the underwear off them within 6 hours of meeting them. Rosa had watched him marry Alicia 12 years ago and had, privately, thought it was the luckiest day of his life. Rosa had also, over those 12 years, watched him slowly, imperceptibly, become a man she no longer recognized. The boy who used to cry when his mother scolded him had become a man who didn't cry at anything. The teenager who used to sit on the kitchen floor and peel potatoes with her had become a man who didn't come into the kitchen anymore, except to look for whiskey. He started going to that apartment 4 years ago, Rosa said. She was draining the pasta into a colander in the sink. Steam rose up around her face. The Midtown one, before Camilla, before all of them. There was a Russian girl first, a dancer, then an Argentine, then a girl from Queens who worked at the desk of a hotel he liked. I know because I washed the shirts, Piccola. I have washed the shirts of every one of them. Rosa, why didn't you... Tell you? Rosa turned off the burner. What would I have told you? That your husband was a pig? Piccola, you are 37 years old. You have eyes. You have a brain bigger than any of the men in this family put together. You knew. You have known for years. What I was waiting for, what I have been waiting for, was the day he did something you could not look past. Because until that day came, it was not my place. Alessia thought about that. It was true. She had known. She had always known. She had simply made a decision, somewhere around year 4 of the marriage, that she was not going to let the dancers and the Argentines and the girls from Queens diminish what she had. She was the wife. She had the name. She had the bed. She had the ring. The rest of it she could live with, because everyone in this life lived with it, and pretending otherwise was a luxury for women who had married insurance agents. But Camila Vega was not a dancer. Camila Vega was not a hotel desk girl. Camila Vega was a replacement. Tell me about the phone, Alicia said. Rosa wiped her hands on a dish towel. In the drawer, left-hand side, under the legal pad he never uses. It is one of those cheap plastic ones, the kind the men in this family use when they do not want the real phones listening. He has had it for 3 weeks. I know because 3 weeks ago he called me into the study and told me, very seriously, that I was not to clean the desk anymore. Only the floor. Only the bookshelves. Not the desk. And you cleaned the desk. Of course I cleaned the desk, Rosa said. I am 71 years old. I am not afraid of Dante Russo. Alessia almost laughed. It was the first thing since the message from Luca that had almost made her laugh. The number I wrote down, Rosa said, is the number he has called most often from that phone. I know because I unlocked the phone. Alessia stared at her. You unlocked the phone. The passcode is his mother's birthday. It has been his mother's birthday for every phone he has owned since 1998. The man has no imagination. Rosa. Piccola, do you want to know what was on the phone, or do you want to stand there looking at me like I have grown a second head? Alicia set down the spoon. Tell me. Rosa took off her apron. She folded it very neatly over the back of a chair. She sat down at the kitchen table. She folded her hands in front of her, and the hands were old and spotted and veined and steadier than any hands Alessia had seen in a month. He is not just bringing her to the Montalto gathering, Rosa said. He is going to ask her to marry him. The kitchen went very quiet. Alessia sat down across from Rosa. She did it slowly, the way you sit down when you have just heard a number that is too big to fit in your head. He's already married, Alicia said. Yes. To me. Yes. Rosa, he can't. Rosa looked at her, and the look was so sad, so old, so full of a patience that had watched 4 generations of men behave the same way, that Alicia felt the bottom of her stomach drop out. Piccola, Rosa said. He has been meeting for 6 months with a lawyer in New Jersey, a family lawyer. A good one. The name is Carmine Pastore. He has retained Carmine Pastore on a private matter. The private matter is you. He's filing for divorce. He is preparing to. He hasn't said anything to me. He is not going to say anything to you. He is going to present Camilla at the Montalto gathering. He is going to introduce her as his partner. He is going to let the news travel back to the other families the way news travels in this life, which is to say, sideways and with a great deal of wine involved. And then, once every boss on the East Coast has met her and accepted her, he is going to come home and tell you, very calmly, that he wants a divorce. And he is going to expect you, because you are a reasonable woman and because you understand how the world works, to sign the papers and disappear. What about the settlement? Piccola. He will offer you something, a house, an account, enough money that no reasonable woman could complain. He is not a cruel man in his own mind. In his own mind, he is being generous. In his own mind, he is giving you a gift. A gift? Yes. Rosa, yes. I am going to ruin him. I know. I'm going to take every single thing he has ever built, and I'm going to burn it down in front of him, and I'm going to stand on top of what's left, and I am going to make him watch. I know, Piccola. And then Rosa, I'm going to decide, after he has nothing left, after he is kneeling on the floor of his own empire with nothing to his name but the shirt I let him keep, I'm going to decide whether to let him live. Rosa looked at her for a long moment. Then Rosa reached across the table and she took Alessia's face in both her old papery hands, and she kissed her on the forehead, very gently, the way a grandmother kisses a child going off to war. Brava, Rosa said softly. Finally, brava. That afternoon, Dante took Alicia to lunch. This was not planned. This was, Alessia would later realize, a piece of calculated theater. He came downstairs at 1:45, freshly showered, in a charcoal suit she had picked out for him at Brioni the previous fall, and he told her, with a smile that did not reach his eyes, that he had cleared his afternoon and that he was taking her to the little place in the village she liked, the one with the veal. She said yes. She said yes because a woman who is planning to destroy her husband does not say no to lunch. They drove to the village in the Maybach. Luca was behind the wheel. Luca did not look at Alicia once, not in the rear view, not when he opened the door for her, not when she stepped out onto the sidewalk in front of the restaurant. Luca's face was the face of a man who had sent a text message at 11:47 the previous night and was now wondering whether he had just ended his own life. She touched his arm as she passed him on the sidewalk, just for a second, just enough. He did not move. But when she glanced at him over her shoulder as Dante held the door of the restaurant open, she saw him close his eyes, and she saw his shoulders drop half an inch, and she understood that Luca Bianchi was now, officially, her soldier. The restaurant was half empty. 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. A booth in the back, the one the owner always saved for Dante, with the view of the street through the front window and the wall at your back and nobody within earshot. The owner, a bald man named Nino, kissed Alessia on both cheeks and told her she looked like an angel today. She thanked him. She sat down across from her husband. She put her napkin in her lap. Dante ordered for both of them. He always did. He ordered the veal for her and the osso buco for himself, and a bottle of Barolo from a vineyard she had introduced him to 3 years ago, a vineyard he now pretended he had discovered. When the waiter left, Dante looked at her across the table. He reached out. He took her hand. He held it in both of his, the way he used to do early in their marriage, when he was still trying. Amore, he said. Alessia felt every muscle in her face arrange itself into the shape of a woman being loved. I need to talk to you about something. Here it is, she thought. Here it comes. He's going to tell me now. He's going to tell me about Camilla, about the divorce, about the gift he has prepared for me. I didn't expect it to be today. I thought I had 3 weeks. She kept her face still. Okay, she said. It's about the Montalto gathering. Her heart did not move. Her breath did not change. Somewhere inside her skull, a very small voice said, Here, he is actually going to say it. Do not move, do not blink, do not let him see a single thing in your face. What about it? She said. I've been thinking. Dante rubbed his thumb across her knuckles. About the last few years. About the fact that I've been going to those things alone. You know, I've always said it was tradition, men only at the table. And it used to be, it used to be like that back when my father was alive. But times change, and the other families, they bring their wives now. And I've been thinking, it's wrong. It's been wrong for a long time. You should be there. You should have always been there. Alessia did not move. I want you to come with me, Dante said. The world stopped. She looked at him. She looked at his face, the face she had loved for 12 years, the face she had kissed 10,000 times. The face that 40 minutes ago in a kitchen on East 74th she had decided to destroy. He was inviting her to the Montalto gathering. He was inviting her, not Camilla, her. For one wild, terrible second, the old Alessia rose up inside her and wanted to believe him. The old Alessia, the one who had loved him, the one who had forgiven him for the dancers and the Argentines and the girl from the hotel desk, that Alessia wanted to lean across the table and kiss him and say, yes, of course. Thank you. I knew you loved me. I knew it. I knew you would come back to me. The new Alicia, the one sitting in the booth at the restaurant in the village, looked at her husband's face and saw, in the tiny muscles around his mouth, in the way his thumb was rubbing slightly too hard on her knuckles, in the millimeter too long hold of his eyes on hers, she saw a lie. He was lying. He was lying right to her face. She did not know what the lie was. She did not know yet what he was actually planning. But she knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with the 12 years she had spent learning every reflex of this man's body, that whatever he had just said to her, he did not mean. Why, she thought, why invite me? If the plan is Camilla, why invite me? And then underneath that another thought, colder. Unless I am supposed to be there. Unless the humiliation is the point. The room tilted for just a second and then righted itself. She looked at him. She made herself smile. She made the smile a little shy, a little hopeful, the smile of a wife who had been waiting for this invitation for 12 years and had just received it. Amore, she said softly. Are you sure? I'm sure. You've never... I know I haven't. And I should have. And I'm sorry. He squeezed her hand. You've stood behind me for 12 years, Alicia. You've been my best friend. You've been the smartest person in every room I've ever walked into. It's time the whole world knew it. She let her eyes fill, just a little, just enough that a single tear could form at the corner. Dante, come with me. Yes, she said. Yes, amore. Of course I'll come. He smiled. The smile was real. The smile was the smile of a man who had just gotten away with something and did not realize that the woman across the table had just caught him doing it. The wine arrived. He poured. They toasted. He ordered. She ate. She asked him about the Albanian situation and listened to him lie about it. and nodded and murmured in all the right places. And somewhere under the table, in her lap, she was running her thumbnail along the edge of her wedding ring, back and forth, the way a woman might run her thumb along the edge of a blade. He wanted her at the Montalto gathering. He was going to introduce Camilla there. And he wanted his wife in the room when he did it. The only reason a man did that, the only reason in this life, in this world, among these people, was because he wanted the shame of it to be public. He wanted every boss on the East Coast to see his wife's face crack open in real time. He wanted the whispering to start that night. He wanted it known, in a way that could not be undone, that Alessia Moretti had been finished by her own husband, in public, in front of everyone who mattered. It was not a divorce he was planning. It was an execution. He was going to kill her in a ballroom without ever laying a finger on her, and everyone in the room was going to watch. She looked at him across the table. She smiled. "I love you," she said. "I love you too, amore." They finished lunch. He paid. He tipped Nino too much, the way he always did, because Dante Russo loved to be told he was generous. Luca opened the door of the Maybach. Alessia slid into the back seat and crossed her legs, and as the car pulled away from the curb, she leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes and let her face, for the first time all day, stop smiling. 21 days, she thought. I have 21 days to ruin him. 21 days. Let's begin. She began that night. Dante went out again at 8. He said he had a meeting at the office. Alessia kissed him on the cheek and told him not to stay out too late. She stood in the foyer in her slippers and her cashmere robe, and she watched the Maybach pull away from the curb, and the second the taillights turned the corner onto Madison, she turned on her heel, walked through the house to the study, shut the door behind her, locked it, and took her husband's private life apart with her bare hands. Rosa had told her about the phone in the left-hand drawer. Alessia took the phone out. She typed in his mother's birthday. It unlocked. She sat down at his desk in her cashmere robe, and she scrolled through every text message, every email, every call log, and she copied all of it onto the flash drive she had retrieved from her jewelry box upstairs. She read the texts with Camilla. Some of them made her angry, some of them made her sick. One of them, a text from Camilla from 6 weeks ago, 3 lines long, in which Camilla told Dante that she wanted him to get rid of the old one soon because I am tired of waiting, made Alicia put the phone face down on the desk and go into the adjoining powder room and vomit quietly into the toilet. She rinsed her mouth, she washed her face, she came back out. She picked up the phone. She kept reading. By the time she was done, she had mapped the entire structure of the deception. Dante had been planning this for 13 months. He had set up a trust in the Cayman Islands 3 months ago, in Camilla's name, with an initial deposit of $2 million. He had purchased a co-op on Park Avenue 4 months ago, a co-op Alessia had never heard of, a co-op that was being held by a shell company with Camilla as the sole beneficiary. He had drafted, with Carmine Pastore of New Jersey, a prenuptial agreement dated for a wedding that was tentatively scheduled for June. 4 months from now. He had scheduled his own remarriage before he had bothered to tell his current wife he was leaving her. Alessia read the prenup. Carmine Pastore had done a thorough job. The prenup protected Dante from any claim Camilla could ever make on his assets, which, Alessia noted grimly, meant that even Camilla was going to get something closer to disposable than she realized. But that was not Alessia's problem. Camilla could look after herself. What interested Alessia was what was missing from the prenup. What was missing was any mention of the legitimate business empire, the real estate holdings, the construction company, the restaurant group, the Nassau bank accounts, the Manhattan commercial properties, the Staten Island development deal, because all of those things were held in corporate structures that Alessia herself had designed. And Alessia herself, on paper, owned 51% of every single one of them. Dante had forgotten that. Or more accurately, he had never noticed. He had never noticed because when she had set up those structures 8 years ago, he had been busy doing whatever it was that Dante did, running men, making threats, drinking with his cousins, and he had signed the papers she had put in front of him without reading them. He had signed them because his wife said sign them, and his wife, he had always believed, was looking out for him. His wife had been looking out for herself. His wife had been looking out for herself since the 3rd year of their marriage, when she had understood finally what kind of man she had married, and had decided quietly that she was never going to be the kind of woman who was destroyed by him. She had built a wall around herself. She had built it with paperwork. Dante Russo, on paper, did not own his empire. His wife did, and now she was going to take it from him, legally, with a smile, in front of everyone. The next 3 weeks moved like a fever dream. She barely slept. She barely ate. She lost 8 pounds that she pretended were from excitement about the Montalto gathering. She bought a dress for it, a black Valentino, floor length, with a neckline that dropped just low enough to say, "I am not dead yet." And she made Dante come with her to the fitting, and she let him see her in it in the mirror, and she watched his face, and she knew, from the flicker at the corner of his mouth, that he had not expected her to look that good. She had not looked that good in 5 years. She had stopped trying, because what was the point? Now she was trying again. Now she was trying for the last time. She met Sophia twice a week in the garden on 63rd Street. Sophia brought Vincent into one of those meetings. Vincent Colombo was 64 years old, silver-haired, soft-spoken, the kind of man who looked like a retired judge and was, in fact, more dangerous than any man Alicia had ever been in a room with, including her husband. Vincent sat across from her in the wrought iron chair and listened to her plan for 40 minutes without interrupting. When she was done, he set down his espresso cup, looked at Sophia, looked back at Alessia, and said, "You realize, Mrs. Russo, that what you are proposing is going to end your husband. Not metaphorically. Actually. Yes. You are going to be a widow. Possibly. Probably. I understand that, Mr. Colombo." Vincent looked at her. Then he did something she did not expect. He reached across the little table and he took her hand briefly, formally, almost ceremonially, and he pressed his thumb lightly against her wedding ring. "This ring," Vincent said, "was given to you under an oath. When that oath was broken, the ring became a debt. The debt is now owed to you. I will help you collect it." "Thank you. You are a very impressive woman, Mrs. Russo." "Thank you. I do not say that lightly. I know you don't. My wife says you are the most intelligent person she has ever met. I am inclined to agree with her." Alessia looked at Sophia. Sophia was watching them both with a small, satisfied smile, like a woman who had finally gotten her 2 favorite people in the world into the same room. "Vincent," Alicia said, "can I ask you something?" "Ask." "Why are you doing this?" Vincent Colombo sat back in his chair. He thought about it. 3 reasons, he said. Reason 1. Your husband has been for a very long time a problem at the table. He is arrogant. He is sloppy. He believes he is smarter than he is. Men like that make mistakes that cost other men money, and your husband has cost me money more than once. Reason 2. What he is planning to do to you at the Montalto gathering violates a code that exists in our life whether younger men respect it or not. You do not humiliate your wife in public. You do not humiliate any woman in public, but especially not the mother of your household. My grandfather would have shot him for it. I am not going to shoot him, but I am going to let you do worse. He picked up his espresso. Reason 3, he said, and I would like you to take this one seriously, Mrs. Russo, because I do not say it to many people. Yes? Reason 3 is that I believe if the Russo organization were run by you instead of by him, it would be a better run organization. It would be more profitable. It would be more stable. It would be more respectful to the other families. And if, after this business at the Montalto gathering is concluded, you wish to continue running the Russo organization, in whatever capacity, with whatever partner, under whatever name, I would like you to know that you would have, from this day forward, the full support of the Colombo family, not as your ally, as your partner. Alessia did not speak for a long moment. Mr. Colombo, she said. Vincent. Vincent. Yes? I am going to remember you said that. I am going to remember I said it too, Vincent said, and he smiled, and the smile was warm, and it was the smile of a man who had just made in his own mind a very shrewd business decision. Sophia poured them all more coffee. They kept talking. By the second week, Alessia had built a file. The file was kept on 3 different flash drives, stored in 3 different locations, one in a safe deposit box at Chase, one in Sophia's wall safe behind the Modigliani, one taped to the underside of Rosa's mattress. The file contained in full detail every bank account, every shell company, every transaction, every illegal payment, every bribe, every contract, every deal, every name, every date. It contained audio recordings, pulled from the security cameras in the brownstone, of Dante on phone calls he did not know were being listened to. It contained photographs provided by a private investigator Sophia had retained of Dante and Camilla in public places across 6 different boroughs. It contained the prenuptial agreement. It contained the divorce filings Dante had prepared in Carmine Pastore's office in Teaneck, New Jersey. The file was, when compiled, the single most destructive document in the history of the Russo organization. Alicia had it. 3 copies of it. Dante had no idea it existed. And in 7 days at the Montalto gathering, she was going to put it on every boss's chair before the first course was served. She was, for 3 of those weeks, the perfect wife. She laughed at his jokes. She made his coffee. She rubbed his shoulders when he complained about his back. She listened to him lie about where he'd been the night before, and she nodded and kissed him and said, "Baby, you work too hard." She slept beside him. She did not, she could not, sleep with him. She had told him, the second week, that her doctor had said she needed to rest for a few weeks because she had been feeling run down. He had accepted this without question. He had not touched her in 3 weeks anyway. Neither of them had noticed. She was, in those 3 weeks, loneliest she had ever been in her life. She was also, in those 3 weeks, more alive than she had been in a decade. She sat across from him at dinner and she looked at him, really looked at him, the way you look at a photograph of someone you used to know. And she tried to find, in his face, the man she had married. She could not find him. The man at the dinner table was a different man. Maybe he had always been a different man, and she had only ever seen what she wanted to see. Maybe that was the trick of every marriage. You married a man, and then 12 years later you realized you had been married to your own imagination. One night, late, she was lying beside him in bed. He was asleep. She was not. She was looking at the ceiling and counting the days until the Montalto gathering, and she felt him shift beside her, and she felt his hand come across the sheets and find her wrist, and in his sleep he mumbled something that sounded like her name. She froze. He did not wake up. He just said her name in his sleep, and his fingers tightened on her wrist, and he sighed, and he fell back into whatever dream he had been having. She lay there for a long time. She did not move. She did not breathe. She did not let herself cry, though she wanted to. She wanted to so badly her jaw ached from holding it. Because what Rosa had told her, what Sophia had helped her understand, what she had seen with her own eyes in the texts on the burner phone in the left-hand drawer of the study, none of that was the whole truth of her marriage. The whole truth of her marriage was more complicated. The whole truth of her marriage was that this man, this lying, betraying, cheating, cruel, arrogant, stupid man, had also been for 12 years the man who said her name in his sleep. That didn't save him, but it cost her something. It cost her the clean, simple hatred she had been trying to build. It cost her the ability to tell herself, in the quiet hours, that he was a monster and that she owed him nothing. He was not a monster. He was a man. He was a weak man, a vain man, a stupid man, a man who had been handed the world and had let it rot in his hands. And she had loved him. And she was going to destroy him. And those 2 things were going to sit inside her chest for the rest of her life, and no amount of revenge was ever going to make them balance. She lay there until 3 in the morning. At 3 in the morning, she gently lifted his hand off her wrist, got out of bed, walked down the hall to one of the guest bathrooms, closed the door, turned on the shower to cover the sound, sat down on the cold tile floor, and cried for exactly 11 minutes. Then she stood up. She washed her face. She went downstairs. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up, and she did not cry again. Dad. The day before the Montalto gathering, Luca came to see her. He came alone. He came in the afternoon, while Dante was at the restaurant in Bay Ridge with his lieutenants, pretending to do business that Alessia had, 3 weeks earlier, quietly removed him from. He stood in the foyer in his black overcoat, holding his hat in both hands like a man at a wake, and he waited for Rosa to announce him. And when Alessia came down the stairs in a cream-colored turtleneck and black slacks, he bowed his head half an inch in a way that no man had ever bowed his head to her before. "Mrs. Russo," he said. "Luca, may I speak to you?" "Come into the sitting room." Rosa brought coffee and then vanished. Luca sat on the edge of the couch the way a man sits when he is not sure he is welcome. Alessia sat across from him in the wingback chair that had been her mother's. She crossed her legs. She waited. "Tomorrow night," Luca said. "Yes. I know what you're going to do." "Do you?" "I know most of what you are going to do. I have been watching. I have been listening. I have been putting things together." He looked up at her. His eyes were red-rimmed. He had not been sleeping. "I want you to know that I am with you. Whatever you need, whatever happens, whatever the room does when you do what you are going to do, I am with you. I will stand behind you. I will not stand behind him." Alessia looked at him. "Luca." "Yes?" "Why?" He was quiet for a long time. "You remember the night of your wedding?" he said. "I remember. I said something to you. In the coat room, I had been drinking. I remember. I was in love with you." The room went very still. "I have been in love with you for 12 years, Mrs. Russo. I have never told another living soul. I have never touched you. I have never once, in any way, disrespected my cousin, or my oath, or my family. But I have loved you, and I have watched him treat you like something he keeps in a cabinet. And I have been waiting every day for 12 years for the day he finally did something bad enough that I could tell you the truth. That day was 3 weeks ago. When I sent the text message, I sent it because I love you, and because I have loved you since the moment you walked into our family in that white dress, and because I could not stand for one more day watching him betray the best thing that ever happened to any of us." Alessia did not know what to do with her face. Luca held up one hand. "I am not asking for anything," he said. "I am not offering anything. I am not that kind of man. I am telling you because tomorrow night the world is going to end, and I want you to know, before it does, that there was at least one man in the Russo organization who saw you. I saw you, Mrs. Russo, from the first day. I saw you, and everything you have built, and everything you are about to do. I have been watching it with my whole heart, and if you need a hand in that room tomorrow, my hand is the one that will hold yours." He stood up. He did not wait for her to answer. He bowed his head half an inch again. He picked up his hat. He walked to the door. At the door he turned. "I have also," he said, "already moved the money." "What money?" "All of it. The Nassau accounts, the Cayman Trust, the Manhattan Holdings. I moved them this morning, at your instruction. They are now under the control of the entities you designated, in the names you designated, at the banks you designated. Dante has no access. He will not have access when he wakes up tomorrow morning. By the time he walks into the Montalto estate tomorrow night, he will be, in every legal and financial sense, a man with nothing." Alessia stared at him. She had not instructed this. She had been planning to instruct it. Tomorrow morning? At dawn. 6 hours before the gathering. That had been the plan. Luca had done it today, unilaterally, without asking. "Luca." "I know, Mrs. Russo. I know. I took the risk for you. If you are unhappy with it, you can tell me so tomorrow after, but I did not want you to have to carry it. I did not want your hands to be on the money when the gathering started. I wanted the money already gone, so that tomorrow, when you walk into that room, you walk in as a woman who has already won, not as a woman who is trying to win." He put on his hat. "Good night, Mrs. Russo." "Luca." "Yes?" "Thank you." He smiled. It was a small smile, a tired smile, the smile of a man who had loved someone for 12 years and had finally, in one small way, been allowed to prove it. "It has been my honor, Mrs. Russo." He walked out. Alessia stood in the foyer of the brownstone on East 74th, alone, in her cream-colored turtleneck, and she listened to the sound of his car pulling away down Madison. She felt, for the first time in 3 weeks, the full weight of what was about to happen. Tomorrow night. The Montalto estate. Every boss on the East Coast, Dante on one side of the room with Camilla Vega on his arm, Alessia on the other side with 3 flash drives in her handbag, and Vincent Colombo at her back, and Luca Bianchi at her right hand, and Rosa, sweet, terrifying, 71-year-old Rosa, waiting by the phone in the kitchen on East 74th for the call that would tell her it was done. She walked into the living room. She sat down on the couch. She put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She had done her crying. What came out of her instead was a small, quiet laugh, a laugh that had nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with the strange, wild recognition that she, Alessia Moretti, The good Italian girl from Bensonhurst, the serious-eyed bartender from Little Italy, the quiet wife in the brownstone, was about to walk into the single most dangerous room in the Northeast and, without firing a shot, take it. Rosa came in with a fresh cup of coffee. Rosa sat down on the couch beside her. Rosa did not say anything. Rosa just put her old hand on top of Alicia's, and they sat there together in the fading afternoon light, and after a long time Alessia said very quietly, "Rosa." "Yes, Piccola." "Tomorrow I'm going to put on the black Valentino." "Yes, Piccola." "And I'm going to walk into that room on his arm." "Yes." "And I'm going to smile at every single person he introduces me to." "Yes." "And then, Rosa, halfway through dinner, I'm going to stand up." Rosa was quiet. "And when I stand up," Alicia said, "the man I married is going to stop existing." Rosa squeezed her hand. "Piccola," Rosa said, "wear the pearl earrings, the ones from your mother. She would have wanted to be there." Alessia nodded. Outside, the streetlights were coming on. Inside, two women sat on a couch in a brownstone on East 74th, and one of them was 71 years old, and the other one was 37, and neither of them spoke again for a very long time, because there was nothing left to say, and because tomorrow was coming whether they were ready for it or not. The morning of the Montalto gathering, Alessia woke up at 4:43 a.m. and did not move for a long time. Dante was asleep beside her. He had come home at 2. She had heard him in the bathroom, running the water, brushing his teeth, clearing his throat the way he always did when he had been drinking. He had slid into bed and kissed her shoulder and whispered something she had not been able to hear. And she had pretended to be asleep, and within 90 seconds he had been out. Now, at 4:43, she lay on her back in the dark and stared at the ceiling and listened to his breathing. And for one last time, she tried to remember the man she had married. She tried to remember him at the restaurant in Little Italy. Tried to remember the way he had leaned on the bar that first night and asked her what she was reading and then actually listened to the answer. Tried to remember the way he had kissed her in the rain outside her apartment in Murray Hill after their third date, and the way he had said, in that rough voice of his, "You're different, Alessia, you know that, right? You're different from anybody I've ever known." Tried to remember the weight of him, those early years, when he used to come home at night and find her working at the kitchen table and put his arms around her from behind and press his face into her hair and stand there, just stand there, like a man who had been drowning and had finally come up for air. She tried. She could not get to him anymore. He was behind too much glass. He was behind 12 years of small betrayals and one enormous one. And she could see the shape of him in there, but she could not feel him. And she understood, lying in the dark at 4:43 in the morning, that she was not going to get him back, and that maybe, in some way, she had lost him a long time before any of this had started. Maybe she had lost him on their 5th anniversary, when he had spent the whole dinner on the phone. Maybe she had lost him on her 33rd birthday, when he had given her a diamond bracelet his assistant had picked out. Maybe she had lost him the first time she had walked into the study and seen him hang up a call too quickly, and had decided, without thinking about it, without letting herself think about it, to believe him when he said it was business. Maybe you don't lose a man all at once. Maybe you lose him in 1,000 tiny rooms, one door at a time, and one morning you wake up and the whole house is empty and you are still holding the key. She got out of bed. She went into the bathroom. She turned on the light. She looked at herself in the mirror, and the woman in the mirror looked, she had to admit, tired. 37 years old, dark circles under her eyes, her hair a mess on one side from the pillow. Not a queen. Not yet. Just a woman who had, at 4:43 in the morning, decided she was done. She showered for a long time. She scrubbed herself raw. She washed her hair twice. When she came out, she wrapped herself in a towel, sat down at the vanity, and began the slow, careful work of becoming the woman who was going to walk into that ballroom tonight. She did her own makeup. She always did her own makeup. She had tried, in the early years, to go to the salon with the other wives, and she had hated it, hated the small talk, hated the false intimacy, hated the way the women treated her like a little sister because she was the youngest of the group. She had stopped going. She had learned to do it herself. She did it better than the salon anyway. She took her time. She did her eyes first, then her cheekbones, then her mouth. She used a red she had not worn in years, a deep, arterial red, almost black at the edges, the kind of red a woman wears when she is not trying to look pretty. She looked at herself in the mirror when it was done. There she was. Not the wife in the brownstone, not the woman at the breakfast table. Someone else. Someone her husband had never been introduced to. At 6, Dante woke up. He rolled over, saw her at the vanity, and for a second, one small, telling second, he stared at her like he didn't recognize her. Then his face caught up to itself and he smiled, that sleepy, crooked smile she had once loved. "You're up early. Big day. You look beautiful." "Thank you. Come back to bed for a minute." "I can't, amore. I have a fitting at 9. "A fitting? At 9 in the morning? The dress. I thought you already had the dress." "It needed to be taken in." He looked at her in the mirror. He was still half asleep. He didn't see what was in her face. He saw what he expected to see, which was a wife who was nervous about her first Montalto gathering, a wife who was trying to look nice for him, a wife who was exactly who he had always thought she was. "Come here for a second," he said. She hesitated, then she stood up, walked to the bed, and sat down on the edge of it. He took her hand. He kissed her knuckles. He turned her hand over and kissed the inside of her wrist, the way he used to do a long time ago, and she felt, in that one small gesture, the ghost of every reason she had married him. "I know," he said softly, "that this has been a strange couple of years. I know I haven't been around as much as I should have been. I know I've been distant. I know you've noticed." "Oh," she thought, "oh, Dante, don't do this." "Tonight is important," he said. "Tonight matters. And I want you to know, whatever happens tonight, whatever you hear, whatever anyone says, I want you to know that you are my wife, and that's not going to change, okay?" She looked at him. She kept her face perfectly still. "Whatever you hear, whatever anyone says." He was warning her. He was actually, in his own twisted way, trying to warn her. He was trying to prepare her for the public execution he had scheduled for 9 o'clock tonight. He was trying to soften the blade before he slid it in. And he believed, with the full strength of his conviction, that this was a kind thing to do. That this made him, in some way he would tell himself for the rest of his life, a good man. She almost laughed. She almost told him, right there in the bed, "Baby, I know everything. I know about Camilla. I know about the co-op on Park. I know about Carmine Pastore. I know about the prenup. I know about the wedding in June. I know about the lie you've been telling every man in your organization, that your wife's nerves are going, that she needs to be put somewhere quiet. I know. I know all of it. I have known for 3 weeks. And tonight, Dante, tonight at 9 o'clock, I am going to rearrange the furniture of your entire life." She didn't say any of that. She smiled. She leaned down. She kissed him on the mouth gently, the way a wife kisses a husband when she is about to leave him. "I love you," she said. "I love you too, amor. I'll see you tonight. I'll see you tonight." She stood up. She walked out of the bedroom. She did not look back. Because if she had looked back, if she had seen him lying there in the sheets, his hair mussed, his eyes still soft from sleep, the man she had been married to for 12 years, she was not sure, even then, even after everything, that she could have done what she was about to do. She spent the morning moving pieces. She met Sophia for coffee at an Italian place on Lexington at 8. They did not talk about the gathering. They talked about Sophia's kids. They talked about a book Sophia was reading. They drank espresso and ate biscotti and acted for 45 minutes like two women having a normal Tuesday morning. Under the table in Alessia's purse was a small white envelope containing the final piece of the plan. She handed it to Sophia on the sidewalk outside the cafe. Sophia kissed her on both cheeks and said very quietly, "Tonight, Piccola," and got into her car and drove away. Alessia went to the bank at 9:30. She sat across from a man named Harold at the private banking desk at Chase on Fifth. Harold had been her banker for 8 years. Harold had executed, over those 8 years, some of the most complicated transactions in his entire career, at her instruction. Harold did not ask questions. Harold today gave her 3 items: a small leather portfolio containing notarized copies of every legal document Alessia would need tonight, a cashier's check for an amount she had requested 3 weeks earlier, and a slim silver key on a black ribbon. "The box is in the vault, Mrs. Russo," Harold said. "It has been for 6 years. You are the only person authorized to access it." "Thank you, Harold. May I ask?" "You may not." "Understood." He stood up. He walked her to the door. He shook her hand, which was the first time in 8 years Harold had shaken her hand, and he said, "Whatever you need, Mrs. Russo, today or any day. Thank you. I have always admired you." She turned to look at him. Harold was in his late 50s, thin, graying, a former bond trader who had landed in private banking because he'd gotten tired of the noise. He had never, in 8 years, said a personal thing to her, not one. "Thank you, Harold," she said. "Good luck tonight." He walked back inside. She got into the car. She sat in the back seat for a minute, holding the leather portfolio in her lap. Then she told the driver to take her to Luca's apartment in Bay Ridge, and she rode across the bridge in silence, watching the East River go past. Luca was waiting for her at the curb. He did not invite her up. He got into the back seat of the car, closed the door, and told the driver to just drive around the block for 20 minutes. They rode through the residential streets of Bay Ridge in the mid-morning light, past women pushing strollers, past old men smoking on stoops, past a life that had nothing to do with the life Alessia Moretti was about to blow apart. Luca was not wearing a suit. This was the first thing she noticed. Luca had worn a suit every day of his adult life, even on Sundays. Even at the beach once, she had seen him at a family barbecue in a black suit with his tie loosened, and she had thought at the time that he looked like a man who had forgotten how to be anything else. Today he was wearing jeans and a black sweater and a leather jacket. His hair was uncombed. He looked, she realized with a start, younger. He looked like what he might have been in some other life if he had not been born a Bianchi. "I didn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." "Are you scared?" "No." "You should be." "I know." She looked at him. "Are you?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "I should be. But I'm not. I don't know what the word is. I feel like a man who has been holding his breath for 12 years and is about to exhale." She reached across the seat and took his hand. She had never touched him before, not really, not beyond the formal kiss on the cheek at weddings and funerals. His hand was warm. She held it for about 4 seconds, then she let go. "Luca." "Yes." "After tonight, after it's all done, I want you to leave." "Leave?" "The organization, the city, the life. I want you to go. I have the money for you. Harold moved it this morning. There's an account in Lisbon with your name on it. Enough to live on for the rest of your life. A good life, a quiet life. I want you to take it, Luca. I want you to walk away." He looked at her. "Alessia." "Yes?" "I can't do that." "You can. You should. You've earned it." "I can't leave you." "Luca, I can't." He looked out the window. His face was very still. "I love you. I have told you that. I know it is not a love you can give back to me. I know I will never have what I want, but I cannot live in a world where I am not, in some small way, close enough to watch over you. I cannot leave. I would rather stay and work for your gardener than leave and live in Lisbon. Please do not ask me again." She did not ask him again. She nodded. The car kept circling. "There's something else," Luca said after a while. "What?" "Dante knows." Her heart stopped. "Knows what? Not everything. Not what you're going to do tonight. But he knows something is wrong. He has been asking questions. He has been asking Joey and Polly if I've been acting strange. He has been asking Rosa, apparently yesterday morning, whether you have been receiving visitors. Rosa lied to him. But he has been asking. He is not a stupid man, Alessia. He is a vain man, and a lazy man, and a cruel man, but he is not stupid. He can feel something in the air. He has been able to feel it for a week." "What did he say to you?" "He called me last night, at midnight. He asked me if I was still his cousin." "What did you say?" Luca smiled a small, tired smile. "I told him I had been his cousin since the day I was born, and that nothing in this life was going to change that, and that he was losing his mind if he was calling me at midnight to ask me such a stupid question." "Did he believe you?" "No." "Luca, he is going to come into the ballroom tonight looking for something to be wrong. He's going to be watching every face. He is going to be watching you. He is going to be watching me. He is going to be watching Vincent Colombo. He is going to be watching the door. Then we move faster than he can watch." "Yes." "Is Vincent ready?" "Vincent is ready." Vincent has been ready since the day you walked into his wife's garden. Vincent has, I should tell you, placed 11 of his own men in the service staff at the Montalto estate for this evening. Waiters, valet attendants, the man at the coat check. If anything happens tonight that is not scripted, those 11 men become your 11 men. Do you understand what that means? I understand. He is not playing, Alessia. Neither am I. Luca nodded. The car stopped in front of his building. He sat there for a second, his hand on the door handle. Then he turned back to her. The dress. What about it? Rosa told me. The black Valentino. Yes. Wear the pearl earrings from your mother. Rosa told me that too. And Alessia. Yes? When you stand up in the ballroom, when you stand up and do what you are going to do, do not look at him. Do not look at Camilla. Do not look at anyone but Vincent Colombo. Find his face in the crowd. Keep your eyes on him. He will keep you steady. That is what a boss does. That is why I put him in your corner. Do you understand? Yes. Good. He got out. She watched him walk to his building. He did not turn around. He went inside. The door closed behind him. She sat in the back seat of the car and watched the door for a long moment, and then she told the driver to take her back to Manhattan, and she rode across the bridge a second time, and this time she did not look at the river. She looked at her own hands folded in her lap, and she did not move them, and she did not speak, and she did not, for a single second, let herself cry. The rest of the day moved like it was happening to somebody else. She came home at noon. Rosa was in the kitchen making a small lunch, which Alessia ate mechanically without tasting. Dante came through the kitchen at 1, kissed her on the top of the head, told her she looked tense, told her to take a bath, told her he would see her at 7. He was in a good mood. He was, she realized, almost giddy. He was a man on the edge of getting away with something he had wanted to get away with for a long time. He was a man who did not know, yet, that he was also a man on the edge of a cliff. She did not take a bath. She went upstairs to her side of the closet. She pulled out the garment bag containing the black Valentino and she laid it across the bed. She pulled out the shoes, black, low-heeled, because she was going to need to be able to walk steadily for 4 hours, and high heels were a young woman's game. She pulled out the small black clutch, and inside the clutch she placed one by one the items she had been collecting for 3 weeks. The 3 flash drives, in a small velvet pouch, the leather portfolio from Harold, folded, the small silver key on the black ribbon, a second burner phone fully charged with only one number programmed into it, a number belonging to a man at the New York Post who had been waiting for 72 hours for a particular story to break, a single photograph folded in half of Dante and Camilla standing outside the co-op on Park, and one other thing. At the bottom of the clutch, underneath everything else, she placed a small gold crucifix that had belonged to her mother. Not for protection, not for prayer, just for company. She looked at the clutch. She closed it. She set it next to the dress on the bed. She sat down beside the dress. She put her hand on the fabric. It was cool and heavy and expensive. It had cost almost $9,000, which she had paid for out of one of her own accounts, because she had been quietly keeping her own accounts for 8 years, and her husband had never asked. She thought, for a second, about her mother. Her mother, who had never worn a dress like this in her life. Her mother, who had died 7 years ago in a hospital in Bensonhurst, in a room with gray walls and bad light, with Alessia holding her hand and Dante standing in the corner of the room looking at his phone. Her mother, who on her deathbed had said to Alessia in Italian, "Piccola, you did not have to marry him. I did not raise you to have to marry anyone." And Alessia had laughed and said, "Ma, I married him because I wanted to." And her mother had looked at her with those last, clear, terrible eyes and had said, "Wanting is not enough, Alessia. You can want the wrong thing. Women in our family have been wanting the wrong thing for 200 years. Do not be one more." Her mother had died an hour later. Alessia had never told Dante what her mother said. She sat on the bed now, 7 years later. And she thought about her mother, and she thought about the wrong thing, and she thought about the way her mother had looked at her from that hospital bed, and she made a small private promise to her mother, to herself, to the woman she had been at 24 and the woman she was going to be after tonight, that she was done wanting the wrong thing. She stood up. She walked to the bathroom. She started to dress. hadn't. At 6:45, Dante came into the bedroom. He was already in his tuxedo, black on black. The Tom Ford he had gotten 3 months ago, the one Alessia had told him made his shoulders look better than they actually were. He was freshly shaved, his hair was combed. He was wearing the watch his father had left him. He looked, she had to admit, like what he was. The head of a crime family, on his way to the most important night of his career. He stopped in the doorway when he saw her. He actually stopped. She was standing in front of the full-length mirror in the black Valentino, the pearls at her ears, the clutch in her hand, her hair up, her mouth red. And for a second, the look on his face was the look of a man who was seeing his wife for the first time in 10 years. He stared. "Jesus Christ," he said. "Too much?"
No? No, amore. No.
He walked into the room. He came up behind her. He put his hands on her shoulders and looked at her in the mirror, and she made her eyes meet his in the glass, and she did not flinch. You look like... Like what? Like the woman I should have been bringing to these things for 12 years. She almost laughed. Well, she said, better late than never. Alessia. He stopped. She watched his face in the mirror. For one moment, one strange, impossible moment, she thought he might be about to tell her the truth. About Camilla. About the plan. About the Montalto gathering. About what he was going to do tonight. She thought, for a flash of a second, that if he told her the truth right now in this bedroom with the black dress and the pearls, and 12 years of their life together all standing around them in the mirror, if he told her the truth, she might not be able to do what she was going to do. She might have to stop. She might have to take the dress off and sit on the bed with him and let him tell her everything, and then let him beg, and then maybe, somewhere on the other side of a night of crying, let him back in. She waited for him to tell her. He did not tell her. He squeezed her shoulders. He kissed the back of her neck, right below the clasp of the pearls. He said, "Let's go, amore," and he walked out of the bedroom and down the stairs. Alessia stood in front of the mirror for one more second. She looked at the woman in the glass. The woman in the glass looked back at her. "Okay," Alessia said to the woman in the glass. "Let's go." Shut. The Montalto estate was a long driveway in Westchester that ended in a 4-story stone house with the kind of windows that cost more than most people's mortgages. They arrived at 7:38. The driveway was full of black cars, black Maybachs, black Bentleys, black Cadillacs, a black Range Rover or two for the younger men who wanted to seem modern. Luca drove. Luca did not speak during the ride. Dante did not speak either for most of it. He sat beside Alicia in the back seat, her hand in his, and every few minutes he squeezed her fingers and she squeezed back, and neither of them said anything. And the silence between them was the silence of two people who both knew something was about to happen, and neither of them knew that the other one knew. At the door, a man in a black suit took her coat. The coat check man was one of Vincent's. She recognized him from a photograph Luca had shown her 3 days ago. He did not look at her. He took the coat. He handed her a ticket. As his hand brushed hers, he pressed something into her palm, a folded slip of paper. She closed her fingers around it. Dante was turning away, shaking hands with Salvatore Montalto, the host, a 70-year-old man with a white mustache and an old-world courtliness. Alessia turned with her husband. She extended her hand. She said, "Don Salvatore, it is an honor," in her best Italian, and the old man kissed her knuckles and held her eyes for a second and said, "Mrs. Russo, it is, if I may say, long overdue." "Thank you, Don Salvatore. You are a beautiful woman tonight. You are kind." "I am not kind. I am observant." He smiled. He released her hand. He turned to the next couple. Dante put his hand on the small of her back and guided her into the ballroom, and as he did, she opened her fingers in her clutch, just enough to see the slip of paper the coat check man had given her. It said, in Vincent Colombo's handwriting, "Camilla is seated at table 4. You are seated at table 2. He does not know this yet. When he finds out, watch his hands. I am at table 1. I will not look away from you." She closed her fingers. She put the paper into the clutch. She walked into the ballroom on her husband's arm. The ballroom was enormous. 3 chandeliers, 12 round tables, each set for 10. White orchids in low silver bowls. A string quartet in the far corner, playing something old and Italian and slow. The lighting was low and golden, the kind of light that made every woman in the room look 10 years younger and every man look 10 years more dangerous. Alicia counted, in the first 30 seconds, 6 bosses she had met before, 4 she had only heard of, and perhaps 80 other men whose names she knew from ledgers and wiretaps and phone logs, but whose faces she had never seen. She also counted by the doors 6 of Vincent's men. She also counted, along the back wall, 3 more. She also noticed, at a small table near the orchestra, a woman sitting alone in a red dress, who looked up as Alessia walked in, and whose face, for one small instant, flickered. Camilla Vega. Camilla was beautiful. Alessia had to admit it. Camilla was 26, and she looked 26, and she was wearing a red dress that was cut for a woman 10 years older than she was, and she had her hair up in a way that was supposed to look sophisticated and instead looked like a girl trying too hard. Camilla saw Alessia. Camilla saw Dante. Camilla saw them together, walking in on each other's arms, and Camilla's face did the thing Alessia had been hoping it would do. It went, for one small second, angry. Then Camilla recovered. Camilla smiled. Camilla looked away. She doesn't know yet, Alessia thought. He hasn't told her about the seating. She thought she was walking in on his arm tonight. He lied to her too. It did not make Alicia feel better. It made her feel, briefly, sorry for the girl in the red dress. Just briefly. Then it passed. Dante guided her toward the head table. Salvatore Montalto walked them. Dante's hand was on her back. Dante was smiling. Dante was shaking hands. Dante had not yet looked at Camilla. Dante was, Alessia realized, going to do this in stages. He was going to seat his wife at the head table, and then at some point during the cocktail hour he was going to disengage, and at some later point during the evening he was going to reintroduce himself to the room with Camilla on his arm. And somewhere in the confusion of those 2 moments, he was going to let the room draw its own conclusion. He was counting on the room's confusion. He had not counted on the room already knowing. Because Vincent Colombo had been, for 3 weeks, making phone calls. Salvatore Montalto led them to their seats. Dante on one side, Alessia on the other. The chairs to her right and left were still empty. Dante sat down. Alessia sat down. Dante leaned toward her. "Drink?" he said. "White wine." 1 minute. 1. He stood up. He walked toward the bar. He did not walk toward Camilla. He was being careful. He was being, for Dante, remarkably disciplined. Alessia sat alone at the head table. She did not look around. She did not have to. She could feel it. Every man in the room was looking at her, not staring. These were not men who stared, but looking, glancing, clocking. The wife of Dante Russo, who had not been seen at one of these gatherings in 12 years, was suddenly at table 2 in a black Valentino and pearl earrings, and every boss in the room had been told, in the last 72 hours, in a carefully managed set of private conversations arranged by Vincent Colombo, that something was coming tonight, and that they should pay close attention, and that Alessia Moretti was a woman whose name they were all going to remember by morning. Vincent Colombo, at table 1, caught her eye. He did not smile. He did not nod. He held her eyes for exactly 1 second, and in that 1 second he communicated, more clearly than words could have, a single thought. "I am here. Breathe." She breathed. Dante came back with the wine. The cocktail hour began. It lasted 70 minutes. They were the longest 70 minutes of Alicia's life. She smiled at men she hated. She let herself be kissed on the cheek by men whose phone calls she had been listening to for years. She was introduced for the first time to women she had been studying from a distance since before her own wedding, the wives of the 5 families. Older women, mostly. Women with hair dyed to a uniform shade of dark brown and jewelry that had belonged to their grandmothers. Women who looked at her, one by one, with the specific expression of women who had been wondering, for 12 years, why Dante Russo's wife never showed up, and who were now, for the first time, getting a good look. They liked what they saw. She could tell. She saw it in the small nods, in the way they leaned into her, in the way the older wives began, quietly, to hold her hand while they spoke to her. Old, dry, jeweled hands on her wrist, voices in her ear. "It is so good to finally have you, Mrs. Russo. It is so good to see you here. Why did he keep you hidden for so long, eh?" What a shame. What a beautiful, beautiful dress. My mother had earrings like that. You have your mother's eyes, I can see it. Even though I never met her, you have that kind of eye. Come sit with me after dinner. Come have coffee with me at my house next week. I want to know you. Alessia smiled. She kissed their cheeks. She said yes to every invitation. She was being adopted. In real time, in front of her husband, she was being adopted by the oldest women in their world. Dante noticed. She could tell the moment he noticed. It was at minute 46 of the cocktail hour, when he was standing about 10 feet away from her, holding a scotch, and he turned and saw her with a small group of wives around her, and one of them, old Mrs. Pellegrini, was holding Alessia's hand in both of hers and laughing at something Alessia had said. Dante's face, for a second, did something strange. Something tightened in it, something he had not been prepared for. He was not supposed to be an afterthought in the story of this night. He was supposed to be the story. And his wife, his quiet, good wife, stays home because of her nerves wife, was, for reasons he could not immediately identify, becoming the center of gravity in a room full of the most important women in their world. He walked over. Amore. Dante. May I steal her for a moment? He said to the wives. Mrs. Pellegrini looked at him. Mrs. Pellegrini, 81 years old, widow of a man who had been dead for 25 years, matriarch of the oldest Sicilian line in New York, looked at Dante Russo, and she did not smile at him. Don Russo, Mrs. Pellegrini said, your wife and I are talking. Dante blinked. Of course, signora. We will be finished when we are finished. Of course. He nodded. He stepped back. He walked away. Alessia did not smile, but inside her chest, something small and warm turned over, for the first time all evening. Mrs. Pellegrini squeezed her hand. Piccola, the old woman said in Italian, very low. We have been waiting for you. At 9 o'clock, Salvatore Montalto rang a small silver bell, and the room sat down. Alessia walked back to table 2 with Dante at her elbow. Camilla, across the ballroom at table 4, was already seated. Camilla was watching them. Camilla's face was carefully composed, but Alessia could see, from 40 feet away, the small muscle twitching in Camilla's jaw. Alessia sat down. Dante sat down beside her. Salvatore Montalto stood at the front of the room, raised a glass, and gave the welcome toast. It was in Italian. It was long. It was about family, tradition, respect. Alessia listened with half of her attention. The other half of her attention was on the clutch in her lap, and on the weight of the 3 flash drives inside it, and on Vincent Colombo at table 1, who was looking at her, and on the waitstaff moving along the walls, 11 of whom belonged to Vincent, and on her own hands folded in her lap, which she noticed with a small internal shock, were perfectly still. The welcome ended. The first course was served. It was a seafood salad. It was exquisite. Alessia did not eat it. She took 2 small bites and set her fork down. Dante, beside her, was talking to the man on his right, Frankie Morelli, one of the Philadelphia bosses, about some tedious thing involving a union dispute in Jersey. Dante was half turned away from her. Dante was not paying attention to her. Dante, for the first time all night, had let his guard down because Dante had decided that the first course was a safe place, that his wife was settled, that the women at the head table liked her, that the evening was so far going according to plan. Alessia took a sip of her wine. She set the glass down. She turned her head slowly, and she looked at Vincent Colombo. Vincent Colombo looked back at her. He gave her very slightly one small nod. And Alessia Moretti stood up. The chair made a small sound against the parquet. The room did not immediately notice. Dante did not immediately notice. She stood there, at table 2, in the black Valentino, with her clutch in her hand, with her mother's pearls at her ears, and she took one single breath, and she said, in a voice that was not loud but that carried the way her mother's voice used to carry across a crowded Sunday dinner, "Excuse me." The conversation at the nearest table stopped. "Excuse me," she said again, louder this time, clearer. Heads turned. The string quartet across the room stopped playing. Dante turned his head, and for one full second, for the first time in 12 years of marriage, Alessia Moretti saw her husband look at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. She saw him, at last, become afraid of her. Amore, Dante said very softly. What are you doing? Alessia did not answer him. She looked past him. She looked at the room. She looked at every boss on the East Coast, and every wife who had been waiting 12 years to meet her, and every soldier along the walls, and the 11 waiters who belonged to Vincent, and Camilla Vega at table 4 with her fork halfway to her mouth, and Luca Bianchi at table 6 with his hand slowly reaching inside his jacket, and Vincent Colombo at table 1 with his eyes locked on hers. She opened the clutch. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, before we go any further tonight, there is something I need to show you. The room was completely, impossibly quiet. 12 tables, nearly 120 people. Old men with white hair, and older men with dyed hair, and young men in tuxedos who had never seen a moment like this in their lives, and not one of them was breathing. Not one of them was reaching for a glass. The silverware did not clink. The waiters along the walls had stopped moving. Somewhere in a distant corner of the ballroom, a cell phone buzzed once against a tablecloth and then stopped, as if even the phone understood that it had intruded on something sacred. Dante beside her half rose from his chair. Alessia. His voice was low. Too low. The voice he used when he was about to do something violent. She did not look at him. She did not look at him because Luca had told her not to, and because if she looked at him, if she let her eyes meet his in this moment, she was going to see whatever was in his face: fear, rage, betrayal, the small leftover pieces of the man who had once kissed her in the rain on a street in Murray Hill, and whatever it was going to slow her down, and she could not afford to be slowed down. Not now, not by a second. She kept her eyes on Vincent Colombo. Vincent Colombo did not move a muscle. Vincent Colombo's face was the calmest thing in the room. Alessia opened her clutch all the way. She reached inside. She took out the small velvet pouch. She untied the cord, and she removed, one at a time, the 3 flash drives, setting them on the white tablecloth in front of her plate in a small, neat row. Then she took out the leather portfolio. Then she took out the single-folded photograph. She placed them, slowly, deliberately, beside the drives. Her hands did not shake. She had expected them to shake. She had practiced in the bathroom in the brownstone for how she would speak if her hands shook. It turned out she had wasted the practice. Her hands were not shaking. Her hands were the hands of a woman who had spent 3 weeks dying by inches and had now, tonight, come back to life. Alessia. Dante's hand closed around her wrist. Not gently. His fingers dug into the bones of her arm the way they used to dig in, years ago, on nights when he had been drinking and she had said something he did not like. He had not touched her like that in a long time. She had almost forgotten what it felt like. Now here it was again, his grip on her wrist at table 2 of the Montalto gathering, in front of every boss on the East Coast, and she understood, instantly, with a clarity that felt almost tender, that her husband was a man who had only ever had one tool, and that was his hands, and that he had been the same man at 29 as he was at 41, and she had been the only person in the room who had refused to see it. She looked down at his hand on her wrist. She did not pull away. She raised her voice, just slightly. Don Montalto, she said, still looking down, still not looking at her husband. I am an invited guest in your home. I have come here tonight to pay my respects to you, to your family, and to the gentlemen at these tables. My husband is currently holding my arm in a way that is not appropriate for a man of his position, in a house of your family's name. I would ask you, Don Salvatore, as the host, whether you intend to allow him to continue. The silence in the room changed shape. It was no longer the silence of an audience. It was the silence of a tribunal. Salvatore Montalto was 70 years old. Salvatore Montalto had buried 2 wives, 3 brothers, and more enemies than he cared to count. Salvatore Montalto, at the front of the room, set down his glass of grappa. He stood up very slowly, the way old men stand up from good chairs. He looked at Dante Russo across the ballroom. He did not raise his voice. Don Russo, Salvatore Montalto said, release your wife's arm. Dante's fingers did not move. Don Salvatore, with respect, release your wife's arm. The 2 old men, Pellegrini at the next table and Moretti on the far wall, no relation to Alessia, an older cousin to her mother's line, stood up slowly behind Salvatore. Then old Mrs. Pellegrini stood up. Then 3 more wives. Then Vincent Colombo, without any hurry at all, placed both of his hands flat on the tablecloth at table 1 and rose to his feet. Dante looked around the room. For the first time, he saw what she had already seen. He saw the 11 waiters along the walls who were not, in fact, waiters. He saw that the doors to the ballroom were now guarded by men he did not recognize. He saw that every boss in the room had turned in his seat to face him, and that not one of those bosses was smiling. His fingers opened. Alessia's wrist came free. She did not rub it. She did not acknowledge him in any way. She continued to look at Don Salvatore, and she said very politely, "Thank you, Don Salvatore." "Mrs. Russo." Salvatore Montalto inclined his head. "You were saying something to the room." "I was." "Please continue." And here, in the quiet ballroom with the 3 chandeliers and the dying orchids, and the string quartet that had forgotten how to play, Alessia Moretti took the single breath that she had been saving all of her life for this exact moment. "My name," she said, "is Alessia Moretti. I was born in Bensonhurst. My father was a butcher. My mother was a seamstress. I have a master's degree in finance from Columbia University. I have been married to Dante Russo for 12 years. And I am, ladies and gentlemen, the person who has been running his organization since the 4th year of our marriage." The room did not react. The room was beyond reacting. The room was now in the condition of a congregation that has just heard something from the pulpit it did not expect and is waiting in dead silence to see what comes next. "In 2018, Alessia continued, my husband signed over 51% of every legitimate holding in the Russo organization to a series of corporate entities in my name. He did this without reading the documents. He did this because I told him to. He did this because at the time he trusted me, and because at the time I was trustworthy. As of this morning, every one of those holdings, every bank account, every property, every construction contract, every restaurant group, every dollar that has ever moved through the clean side of this family's finances is and has been in my sole legal control. That is not a claim. That is a fact. Don Colombo has reviewed the documentation personally. Don Montalto's attorney reviewed the documentation yesterday. The documents in this portfolio," she tapped the leather once, lightly, "confirm it. Copies have already been distributed to the legal representatives of every family at this gathering. You can verify. You will verify. By tomorrow morning, you will have verified." She paused. She let the information settle. She saw, at table 4, Camila Vega slowly set down her fork. She saw Camila's face go pale under the makeup. She saw in Camila's eyes the exact moment the 26-year-old from Tribeca understood that the man she had been planning to marry in June was, as of this evening, not a man with anything left to marry with. Alessia did not enjoy it. She thought she would. She had imagined in the kitchen at 4 in the morning that when this moment came, she would feel something sharp and bright and close to joy. What she felt instead, looking at Camila's face, was a small, quiet sadness. Because Camila was young, and Camila was stupid, and Camila had been handed a check she did not know was going to bounce, and in another life Alessia might have been her older sister and told her gently, "Piccola, not this one, not this man, you can do better." But it was not another life. It was this one. Alicia turned back to the room. "The second thing I would like to tell you," she said, "is why." Dante beside her did something unexpected. He sat down. He sat down in his chair at table 2, very slowly, and he put his hands flat on the tablecloth, and he looked at a spot on the table just in front of his water glass, and he did not look up. He did not interrupt. He did not argue. He had entered, for reasons Alessia would understand later, the stillness of a man who has seen, all at once, the full shape of the thing he did not know was happening around him. He was listening. For the first time in 12 years, Dante Russo was, completely and humbly, listening to his wife. "My husband," Alessia said, "has for some time been conducting a relationship with a young woman named Camila Vega, who is present in this room tonight at table 4. Every head in the room turned. Camila did not move. Camila's wine glass, still in her hand, trembled once and then stilled. "That is my husband's business," Alicia continued. "The men in this life have always had their arrangements. I am not standing up tonight to complain about another woman. My mother would be ashamed of me if that were why I were standing. I am standing because my husband, in the last 13 months, has done 3 things that go beyond his own appetites and that touch the interests of every family in this room. I would like, with your permission, to describe each of them. Salvatore Montalto, still standing at the front of the room, said, "Proceed, Mrs. Russo." "Thank you, Don Salvatore." She picked up the first flash drive. She held it between her thumb and forefinger, and she let the room see it, and then she set it back down on the tablecloth. "This drive, she said, contains audio recordings and financial documents demonstrating that my husband has, over the last 9 months, been skimming approximately 4% off the top of every shared operation between the Russo organization and the other 4 families at this gathering. The skim has been hidden inside the construction escrow on the Staten Island Pier development. The specific dollar amount to date is $7,480,000. The money has been moved to a Cayman Islands trust that is not, and has never been, part of Russo family holdings. It is a personal trust. The name on it is not Dante's. The name on it is Camila Vega's." The room moved. It was the first sound in the last 3 minutes. A collective shift. 120 people rearranging themselves almost inaudibly in their chairs. The wives did not move. The wives had already understood, before she said it, exactly what she was about to say. The wives had been in this life their whole lives. It was the men who moved. Vincent Colombo, at table 1, closed his eyes for half a second. It was, Alessia understood, a gesture of respect. Vincent had known about the skim. Vincent had verified it. Vincent had for 3 weeks kept the knowledge to himself, which was a favor he was now calling in by not calling it in. Dante's hands, on the tablecloth in front of him, curled slowly into fists. "The second thing," Alessia said. She picked up the second flash drive. "This drive contains transcripts and wire recordings of 3 conversations my husband had in the last 4 months with a federal prosecutor named Maureen Halloran out of the Eastern District of New York." The room went absolutely still. "He was not," Alessia said quickly, "cooperating. I want to be clear about that. He was not cooperating. He was making inquiries. He was making inquiries because he had been approached 18 months ago by an individual within the Russo organization who was considering cooperation, and my husband wanted to understand what protection would be available to him, personally, in the event that the inquiry became formal. The conversations were exploratory. They went no further. But they happened. They were documented. They are on this drive, and they constitute, by the code that has held this life together for 150 years, a violation." Dante's head came up. He looked at her. For the first time, his eyes met hers. What was in his face was not anger. It was not shame. It was something simpler and much more terrible. It was confusion. Real, actual confusion. The confusion of a man who had been so certain for so long that he had gotten away with everything, that he could not now understand how his wife, his quiet wife, his good wife, his stays home because of her nerves wife, had gotten her hands on recordings from a conversation he had held in a parked car on a service road off the Long Island Expressway. He had not, she saw, prepared himself for her at all. He had been living for 12 years beside a woman he had never once looked at seriously. It was the first thing about him, that night, that genuinely broke her heart. "The third thing," Alicia said, and here, for the first time, her voice did something. It got quieter. It got tighter. It got, for a single second, close to the thing she had been holding behind her teeth for 3 weeks. "The third thing," she said, "is personal." She picked up the folded photograph. She unfolded it. She held it up. She did not turn it around. She did not need to. She knew what was on it, and she knew that every person in the room already knew what was on it, because Vincent Colombo's people had made sure in the last 72 hours that every boss in this room had been given a version of the same briefing. "My husband," Alessia said, "has been planning for some months to present Miss Vega at this gathering as his new partner. He has purchased a co-op on Park Avenue for her. He has retained an attorney in New Jersey to prepare divorce papers. He has scheduled, for June of this year, a second wedding. He has told his organization privately that I am unwell, that my nerves are giving out, and that he has been patient with me as long as any reasonable man could be expected to. He has not told me any of this. He has not told Miss Vega that he is tonight breaking the news by staging it. He has arranged, ladies and gentlemen, for a public execution." She set the photograph down. "I am not complaining that my husband took a mistress. I am not that kind of woman, and this is not that kind of evening. I am telling you that my husband planned to humiliate me in this room in front of all of you tonight because he believed I would not survive it. She paused. He was wrong about that. She looked at Vincent. Vincent was still looking at her. Vincent had not blinked. Now, Alessia said. Her voice came back up. It was steady again, businesslike. I have no intention of destroying the Russo organization. I built most of it. It belongs, in every important sense, to me. What I intend to do, with the permission of the families at this table, is the following. She turned slightly. She addressed Salvatore Montalto directly. Effective tomorrow morning, every debt my husband has created with any of your families will be repaid, in full, from my accounts, with interest computed at a rate that will be agreed upon privately tonight. The $7,400,000 will be returned, plus a further $3 million as an act of apology on behalf of the Russo name. This payment will come from me. The conversations with the federal prosecutor will be addressed through a mechanism we will discuss privately. I believe that when the particulars are understood, the families at this table will agree that no further action is necessary, and that the matter can be closed among us, quietly, the way matters of this kind used to be closed. Deet. She paused. Second, the Russo organization's operations will continue. They will continue under my direction. I will not hold any public title. I have no interest in public titles. The face of the organization will remain, for the time being, my husband. Dante looked up at her. She felt him look up at her. She did not return the look. But the face, she said, will be a face. Nothing more. Every decision of consequence, every dollar of consequence, every deal of consequence will come through me. I'm not asking for your approval for this. I'm informing you of a fact that is already true, and has been true, and has been obvious to the wives in this room for many years. I am simply, tonight, making it obvious to the husbands as well. A sound happened, somewhere in the back of the room. It was not a laugh. It was almost a laugh. It was the sound an old boss makes when his wife turns to him at a dinner and raises one eyebrow and says, "See? I told you about that one." Third, Alessia said. She picked up the third flash drive. This drive contains everything I have not yet said. It contains a full accounting of every holding, every operation, every alliance, every debt, every favor, every obligation of the Russo organization as of this afternoon at 4 p.m. A copy of this drive is already in the possession of legal counsel for each family at this gathering. I do this because I am not my husband. I am not going to run an operation in the dark, and I am not going to build my position on the silence of other people. Every family in this room will know, as of tomorrow morning, exactly what my books look like. In return, and I want to be very clear, Don Salvatore, that this is a request, not a demand. In return, I am asking the families to recognize me, not as a wife, not as a widow, not as a substitute, as the operational head of the Russo organization. With whatever formal acknowledgement the families at this table deem appropriate. Bullschmetz. She set the drive down. She folded her hands. She waited. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then Vincent Colombo said, without moving from his place at table 1, "I recognize her." The room turned slightly to face him. Vincent Colombo was not a man who spoke often. Vincent Colombo, when he did speak at a gathering of this kind, was listened to with the same attention that men give to the sound of their own door being opened in the middle of the night. "I have known Mrs. Russo for 8 years, Vincent said. "I have done business with the Russo organization for 12. In the last 3 weeks, I have personally reviewed the documentation she has described. I have personally interviewed 3 individuals within her husband's organization. I have personally verified every claim she has made tonight. The claims are accurate. The documents are genuine. The money has been moved. The matter is, from the perspective of the Colombo family, concluded on terms that honor us. I recognize Mrs. Russo as the operational head of the Russo organization. I extend to her, on behalf of my family, our full cooperation going forward." He sat down. There was another long silence. Then, from table 3, old Mr. Pellegrini, the husband of the matriarch, cleared his throat. "I recognize her," he said. From table 5. "Recognized." From table 7, a voice Alessia did not know. "Recognized." From table 9, "The Genovese family recognizes Mrs. Russo." From the front of the room, last, the voice that mattered most. Don Salvatore Montalto, old Salvatore said, very formally, on behalf of the Montalto family, recognizes Mrs. Alessia Moretti Russo as the head of her house. The matter is concluded. The room, for the first time in nearly 20 minutes, began to make noise again. It was not applause. These were not people who applauded. It was a low collective murmur, the murmur of men and women who had witnessed something none of them had seen in their lifetimes, and who would be telling the story of it in their own houses for the rest of their lives. Alessia felt her knees go for 1 second. She did not let them. She sat down. She sat down in her chair at table 2, beside her husband, and she picked up her wine glass, and she took one small sip, and she set the glass back down. Dante, beside her, did not speak. Dante, beside her, was crying. He was crying silently, with his hands still flat on the tablecloth, looking at the spot just in front of his water glass, and the tears were moving down his face one at a time, and he was not wiping them away. He was, Alessia understood with a shock, not crying because he had been destroyed in front of every boss on the East Coast. He was crying because somewhere, in the last 20 minutes, he had finally seen his wife for the first time. He had seen her, and he had recognized her, and he had understood all at once what he had been living beside for 12 years. She did not look at him. She could not look at him. If she looked at him, she was going to start crying too, and she could not start crying in this room, not in front of these people, not tonight. She signaled very slightly to the waiter at the wall. The waiter, one of Vincent's men, stepped forward. "The next course, please," she said. The waiter nodded. The course came. The string quartet, uncertainly, began to play again. The conversation at the tables, tentative at first, slowly came back to life. The wives, one by one, came over to her and took her hand. Old Mrs. Pellegrini kissed her on both cheeks and whispered in her ear, in Italian, "Welcome, my darling. Welcome at last. We have been missing you for a very long time." Alessia did not cry. She ate 3 bites of the next course. She drank half her wine. She smiled at the right moments, and she shook the right hands, and she allowed herself to be congratulated, privately, by men who would not have looked her in the eye an hour ago. She carried herself for the next 45 minutes like a woman who had just bought a company, not destroyed a marriage. And at exactly 10:34, Camilla Vega stood up from table 4, picked up her evening bag, and walked alone out of the ballroom. Nobody stopped her. Nobody looked at her. Nobody said her name. By the time she reached the coat check, she was, in the mental accounting of every person in that room, already a stranger. She would get her things. She would get into a car. She would, by the time Alessia got home that night, have been removed from the co-op on Park Avenue by a set of attorneys that Vincent's people had placed on standby. She would find her Cayman accounts frozen. She would find her American Express cards canceled. She would find, over the following weeks, that no man in the 5 boroughs was willing to take her phone call. She would survive. She was young. She was beautiful. She was not stupid. She would, in the end, find a new life, probably in Miami, probably with some lawyer or some developer, and she would never, for the rest of her life, speak the name Russo out loud again. Alessia thought about her, for one small second, as Camilla walked out the door. Then she let her go. No. The gathering did not end until well past midnight. Alessia stayed through all of it, every course, every toast, every long, winding after-dinner conversation on the terrace with men who wanted, now, to be seen standing next to her. She drank black coffee. She smoked, for the first time in 10 years, a single cigarette offered to her by old Mrs. Pellegrini on the stone terrace overlooking the lawns. The cigarette tasted terrible. She smoked it anyway. Mrs. Pellegrini held her elbow and said, in Italian, "You did it very well, Piccola. You did it exactly the way my mother would have done it. You have the hands." Alessia thanked her. She did not say that she had not done it by herself. She did not say that if it had not been for Rosa and Sophia and Vincent and Luca, she would still be sitting in the brownstone on East 74th with a glass of warm wine, looking out at the dead hydrangeas, waiting for the text message that had turned her life into the life she was now living. She kept that to herself. Some things were for her alone. At 12:15, Luca brought the car around. Dante came out of the ballroom behind her. He had not spoken at any point during the rest of the evening to anyone. He had sat at table 2. He had not eaten. He had drunk 4 glasses of grappa, quietly, one after the other, and he had looked at the tablecloth for most of 3 hours. No one had spoken to him. No one had approached him. The men he had considered allies 48 hours ago had walked past him without meeting his eye. He had been, over the course of a single evening, made a ghost in his own life. He walked to the car like a man who had been drugged. Luca opened the door. Alessia got in. Dante got in beside her. Luca closed the door. The car pulled away from the Montalto estate, and the long stone driveway slid past the windows, and neither of them spoke for the first 20 minutes of the drive. Alessia did not cry. She did not think about him. She thought about her mother. She thought about the dress. She thought about the bath she was going to take when she got home, the very long, very hot bath, and about how she was going to soak until the water went cold, and then she was going to sleep for 14 hours. At the first traffic light inside the city, Dante spoke. Alessia. His voice was hoarse. She did not turn her head. Alessia, please. Please what, Dante? Please, please look at me. She turned her head. She looked at him. In the low orange light of the street lamp through the window, he looked for the first time in 12 years older than her. He looked tired. He looked diminished. He looked like a photograph of himself that had been left too long in the sun.
I didn't know, he said. Didn't know what? Any of it. What I was doing. What I had become. Dante. No, Dante, don't. I have to say it. I don't need you to say it. I have to say it anyway. He looked down. He was still in the tuxedo. His tie was undone. His eyes were red. He looked like every man she had ever seen in this life after a very long night, half boy, half ruin. I didn't know what I had, he said very quietly. I knew abstractly. I knew you were smart. I knew you were the one who handled the paperwork, the accounts. I knew all of it. But I did not know, Alessia. I did not know what you actually were. I thought you were my wife. I thought I was the one building it, and you were helping me. That's what I thought. That's what I believed. And I look at you tonight, in that dress, standing up in that room, and I realize I have been living with a person I never actually looked at. For 12 years. I have been married to a stranger who was also, apparently, the person holding my entire life together. And I don't know what to do with that. He stopped. He put his face in his hands. I am so sorry, he said into his hands. I am so sorry. Alessia looked at him. She wanted, very badly, to feel nothing. That would have been easier. If she could have felt nothing, if she could have looked at him in that back seat and felt only the hard, clean satisfaction of a woman whose enemy has been defeated, then she could have done what Vincent Colombo had quietly suggested to her in a whisper on the terrace when he had kissed her hand good night. Vincent had said, "Whatever you decide about him, Mrs. Russo, I will make it happen. If you need it done, my people can do it tomorrow. He does not have to come home with you. He does not have to come home at all." She had told Vincent she would let him know in the morning. She had meant it. She had imagined all the way through the gathering that she would get into the car and she would look at her husband and she would feel nothing and she would call Vincent at dawn and by noon the next day she would be a widow. But now she was in the car and she was looking at him and she was not feeling nothing. She was feeling, against every strategic consideration, against every reasonable impulse, something more complicated. She was feeling the 12 years. She was feeling the bar in Little Italy, the rain outside her apartment in Murray Hill, the funeral home floor the night his father died, the brownstone on East 74th, the one they had walked through together, the one that had been going to be their forever house. She was feeling the weight of him asleep beside her for 4,375 nights. She was feeling, she realized with a kind of horror, the fact that she had loved him. Not in the way she had loved him at 24. That love was gone. That love had died 3 weeks ago at 11:47 p.m. in a kitchen on East 74th. But the 12 years were real. The 12 years did not just disappear because the 13th had been a lie. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said very softly, without looking at him, "Dante, yes, look at me." He lifted his face out of his hands. She looked at him in the orange light, and she made him look at her, and she said, You were going to let her humiliate me in front of 100 people tonight. You were going to let me sit at that table and watch you walk Camilla in on your arm. You were going to let me understand in public that my life was over. You were going to do all of that, and you were going to come home afterward, and you were going to tell me, with a very serious face and a very soft voice, the way you do when you want something, that it was for the best, that I would understand in time, that you would make sure I was taken care of, that we could still be friends. You had written the speech. You had probably practiced it in the mirror. You are, in fact, still the kind of man who would have stood in our bedroom tonight and told me all of that, if I had let you. Dumb. He did not speak. Do you know how I know that, Dante? He shook his head. Because I have been married to you for 12 years, and I know you. And tonight, in that ballroom, for the first time, you know that I know you. That's what happened tonight. You did not find out that I had run your organization. You found out that I had been watching you the whole time, and you cannot stand that. He started crying again. I don't know what to do, Alessia. I know you don't. I can't go home with you tonight. I can't even look at you. You are going to come home with me tonight. What? You're going to come home with me tonight? You're going to sleep in the guest room on the 3rd floor? You're going to get up tomorrow morning at 7. You are going to put on a suit. You are going to come down to breakfast. You are going to do exactly what I tell you to do, exactly when I tell you to do it, for the next 6 months, and you are not going to complain, and you are not going to question me, and you are not going to say one word about our marriage to any person on this earth who does not already know. Is that clear? Martin. Alessia, is that clear, Dante? He nodded. I need you to say it out loud. It's clear. Good. Alessia, What? Can I ask you one thing? 1. Are you going to have me killed? The car moved through the dark. Luca, in the front seat, did not move. Luca's eyes, in the rearview mirror, did not flicker. Alessia looked at her husband. She looked at him for a long moment, then she said very quietly, I haven't decided yet, Dante. He closed his eyes. Okay, he said. Okay. Okay, Alicia. He did not speak again for the rest of the drive. The car went over the bridge. The lights of Manhattan came up around them. The East River went by, black as tar, and somewhere across the water the towers of Midtown rose in their fierce white grids, and Alicia watched it all pass and did not feel, for any of it, any particular thing. She just felt tired. She felt, in every bone, the tiredness of a woman who had just lived through the longest night of her life and was now going to have to figure out what the rest of her life was going to look like in the morning. Luca pulled the car up to the curb on East 74th at 1:23 a.m. He opened Alessia's door. She got out. She walked up the steps of the brownstone. The door was unlocked. Rosa was in the foyer in her wool robe, holding a cup of tea in both hands, her gray hair down around her shoulders, waiting. Rosa looked at her. Rosa did not speak. Alessia did not have to tell her. Rosa set the tea down on the foyer table. Rosa opened her arms. Alessia walked into them. And there, for the first time that entire night, in the warm dark of the foyer, in the brownstone on East 74th, with her husband getting out of the car on the curb behind her, and Luca standing guard at the bottom of the steps, and every boss on the East Coast now sleeping or lying awake thinking about her name, Alessia Moretti put her face into her housekeeper's shoulder, and she cried, Part 5, lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện và hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mọi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới, liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch, sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần, duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ, phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc, kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ độ kịch tính không viết lan man, có quan điểm cá nhân, thông điệp, bài học, góc nhìn con người. Nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sang. Có yếu tố con người, cầm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo, phần 5 giải quyết hết vấn đề và kết thúc trọn vẹn câu chuyện. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document, chỉ đặt bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật, không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu.
Show more 1637. She cried for a long time. Rosa held her. Rosa did not shush her. Rosa did not rub her back the way some people do, the way that makes the crying worse by reminding you that someone is watching you cry. Rosa just stood there, in the foyer of the brownstone on East 74th, at 1:30 in the morning, in a wool robe that smelled like bread and bay leaves, and she held Alessia the way you hold a person who has, somehow, just carried something home on her back that was always too heavy for her. Dante came in behind them. He stood in the doorway. He did not try to come closer. He had his tuxedo jacket folded over his arm and his tie in his hand, and he looked, in the low light of the foyer, like a man who had been rescued from a fire and did not yet understand that he was the one who had started it. Rosa looked over Alessia's shoulder at him. Rosa did not speak. Rosa looked at him the way she used to look at him when he was 8 years old and had broken something in the kitchen, and the look did what it had always done. Dante's face came apart for 1 second, and then he said in a voice that was barely a voice, Rosa, Upstairs, Rosa said. The blue room, 3rd floor. There is water beside the bed. There are sheets on the bed. I do not want to hear you tonight. I do not want to see you tonight. Go. He went. He went up the stairs like a child who had been sent to his room. One hand on the banister, shoulders bent, the sound of his dress shoes on the wooden treads was the loneliest sound in the house. When the door of the 3rd floor guest room closed, Rosa finally exhaled. Piccola, she said, very softly. Come into the kitchen. Alessia followed her. She sat at the kitchen table in the black Valentino, her makeup ruined, her pearls still at her ears, her hair coming down in pieces at her temples. And Rosa made her a cup of chamomile tea and set a plate of almond cookies on the table, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Rosa sat down across from her. Tell me, Rosa said. Alessia told her. She told her about the ballroom, about Don Salvatore standing up, about the wives and the flash drives, and Camilla walking out alone at 10:34, about Dante in the car, about Vincent Colombo's offer on the terrace, about the question in the back of the car, about the answer she had given, which was not really an answer at all. I haven't decided, she said. That's what I told him. I haven't decided. Rosa picked up her teacup. She looked at it for a moment, then she put it back down. Piccola, she said, whatever you decide, I will not judge you. Rosa, I mean it. I know you mean it. That's not what I need from you tonight. What do you need from me tonight? Alessia thought about it. I need you to tell me, she said, what you would do. Rosa smiled. It was a small, tired, 71-year-old smile. I am not you, Piccola. I am an old woman who washed his collars. What I would do is not the same as what you should do. Tell me anyway. You will not listen. Tell me anyway, Rosa. Rosa sighed. I would not kill him, Rosa said. Why not? Because I buried a husband like him once, and it did not make me feel the way I thought it would. Alessia looked up. She had never, in 12 years, heard Rosa say it out loud. Rosa's husband. The story had always been that he had died of a heart attack in 1992. Rosa had never contradicted the story. Rosa had never confirmed it either. Now, across the kitchen table at nearly 2 in the morning, Rosa looked at Alessia with a kind of exhaustion Alessia had never seen on her face before. You didn't have to, Alessia said. No, Rosa said. I didn't have to. But I did. Or, to be truthful, I did not stop it when I could have. Which is the same thing. Which is the thing I have carried with me every day for 34 years. Which is the thing I will carry into the ground. Do you understand what I am telling you, Piccola? You're telling me not to. I am telling you, Rosa said, that the man upstairs in the blue room is already dead. The man who walked into that ballroom tonight with his wife on his arm does not exist anymore. You killed him already. You killed him in that ballroom. He will not recover. He will never, for the rest of his life, be the man he was at 7 o'clock this evening. That man is gone. What is left in the blue room upstairs is the shell of him. And you can end that shell if you want to. You have every right. But you will not be killing your husband. You will be killing a man who is already a ghost. And when you bury him, Piccola, you will find, and I am sorry to say this because I love you, you will find that what you have buried is also the last 12 years of your own life. Because those 12 years are in him. They are not in you. You did not live them alone. If you end him, you end them. They become nothing. A story about a widow who did what she had to do. That is the story you will have. It is not a bad story, but it is a smaller story than the one you could have. What is the bigger story, Rosa? Rosa looked at her for a long time. Then Rosa said, the bigger story, Piccola, is that you let him live, and you make him watch, every day for the rest of his life. You make him watch you be the woman he never saw. You make him watch you run the empire he thought was his. You make him watch you become what you already were, except now without any shadow on you. You keep him. You keep him the way a queen keeps a disgraced general. Not in the bed, not in the heart, just in the house. Visible, alive, small, for the rest of his natural life. Alessia was quiet. That's cruel, Rosa. Yes, Rosa said. That might be crueler than killing him. Yes. Is that what you would do? No, Piccola. That is what you will do, because that is who you are. I would have buried him in the yard. You are a different kind of woman than I ever was. You are smarter. You are colder, in the ways that matter. And you are, Rosa hesitated, you are softer, in the ways that don't show. You will not kill him. You do not want to. You want him to live with it. That is why you haven't decided. You have decided. You are just taking the long way around to admitting it to yourself. Alessia put her face in her hands. She sat there for a long time. Rosa did not move. Rosa just waited. Rosa had done her waiting for 12 years. A few more minutes was nothing to her. Finally, Alessia lifted her face. Call Vincent in the morning, she said. Tell him thank you. Tell him no. Rosa nodded. Brava, Rosa said quietly. Now upstairs, bath, bed. I will wake you when I wake you, not before. Rosa. Yes. Thank you. Rosa reached across the table and took her hand. Piccola, Rosa said. It has been an honor. Go to bed. She slept for 11 hours. When she woke up, the light through the curtains was the long, slanted light of a winter afternoon. Her mouth was dry. Her head hurt. The black Valentino was in a heap on the chair in the corner. The pearl earrings were on the vanity, one of them lying on its side. She turned her face into the pillow and for 1 second forgot everything. She was just a woman in a bed at 3 in the afternoon with a headache and the taste of last night's wine at the back of her throat. Then she remembered. She lay there for another long minute. Then she got up. She went downstairs in a robe and slippers and found Rosa in the kitchen making soup and the smell of garlic and tomato and something else. She could not place it. Maybe it was her mother's kitchen. Maybe it was her grandmother's. The smell of that soup almost undid her. She sat at the kitchen table. Rosa put a bowl in front of her. Alessia ate all of it. She ate bread. She drank a whole glass of water. She realized, halfway through the bread, that she had not eaten anything substantial in 3 days. Where is he? She said. The blue room. Still? He has not come out. I brought him breakfast at 10. He did not eat it. I took it away. He is sitting on the bed in his undershirt. He has not showered. He has not shaved. He is looking at the wall. Has anyone called? Everyone has called, Piccola. I did not answer. I sent all of it to the phone in the study. You can go through it when you are ready. Luca. He is outside. He has been outside since 8 in the morning. He is in his car. He will not leave. Tell him to come in. He will not come in. I already told him. He said he will stay in the car until you are ready to see him. I brought him coffee. Alessia almost smiled. Sophia. Sophia called 4 times. I told her you would call her tonight. She understood. She said to tell you she is proud of you and that Vincent sends his respects, and that nothing needs to be done today. Everything can wait until Monday. Good. There is one more thing. What? Rosa hesitated. There is a lawyer waiting in the sitting room, she said. Mr. Caruso. From the firm on Madison. He has been here since 1. He would not leave. He says he has documents for you to sign.
He says he was retained by Don Colombo yesterday on your behalf. Alessia closed her eyes.
Vincent Colombo had spent all of yesterday, while she had been at the Vanity doing her makeup, preparing the legal architecture of her next life. He had known, before she had known herself, exactly what she was going to decide. He had known she would not have Dante killed. He had known she would not leave him. He had known she would keep him. And he had retained a lawyer in advance to paper over the shell of her marriage so cleanly that, by the time she came down for lunch on a Saturday afternoon, the papers were already on her dining room table, waiting for her signature. Vincent Colombo did not play. "Tell Mr. Caruso," she said, that I will see him in 20 minutes. Tell him thank you for waiting." "Yes, Piccola." "And Rosa." "Yes." "Take breakfast up to the blue room again. Eggs, the way he likes them. Coffee, the paper. Do not say anything to him. Just put the tray down and leave it." Rosa looked at her. Rosa did not ask. Rosa just nodded. "Yes, Piccola." Mr. Caruso was a thin man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and the posture of a former military officer. He stood up when she came into the sitting room, and he did not look at her with pity, which was the first thing she noticed about him and the thing she liked most. He looked at her the way a lawyer looks at a new client who is going to be a great deal of work and is also going to be worth it. "Mrs. Russo." "Mr. Caruso." "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for waiting. Don Colombo retained my firm yesterday on a matter related to the reorganization of your household. The documents have been prepared. They are ready for your review. Walk me through them." He walked her through them. There were 7 documents. The first was a trust, a very large, very complex trust that would hold every legitimate asset currently under Alessia's name, with Alessia as the sole beneficiary and sole trustee, and with a list of contingent beneficiaries that did not include Dante Russo under any circumstance whatsoever. The second was a power of attorney document, granting Alicia full legal authority over every aspect of Dante's personal affairs, including his medical care, his finances, his legal representation, and his residence, effective immediately. The third was a post-nuptial agreement, already countersigned by Carmine Pastore in New Jersey, which eliminated any future claim Dante could make against any asset Alessia currently held or would ever hold, and which stipulated that any divorce action would be resolved according to terms set unilaterally by Alessia at the time of filing. The fourth was a corporate restructuring package that moved the operational control of the Russo organization into a holding company called Morelli Ventures LLC, which was registered in Delaware and had Alessia as its sole principal. The fifth was a non-disclosure agreement designed for Dante's signature. The sixth was a similar non-disclosure for Luca. The seventh was a document Alessia did not recognize. "What is this one?" she said. Mr. Caruso looked at it. "This one," he said, "is a personal matter. Don Colombo asked me to include it. He said you would understand." She read it. It was a small, simple document, 2 pages. It was a conditional deed of gift, transferring one specific asset from Vincent Colombo, personally, to Alessia Moretti, personally. The asset was a house, a small stone house on the Amalfi Coast, outside a town called Praiano. The conditional clause was very narrow. The gift would take effect only in the event that, at some point in the future, Alessia Moretti Russo decided that she wished to leave New York permanently and required a place to live that was not known to anyone in her present life. The condition was this: she did not have to tell Vincent if she used it. The house was hers in the event she needed it. She was not required to explain. Alessia read the document twice. Then she looked at Mr. Caruso. "Please tell Don Colombo," she said, "that I am honored." "I will tell him, Mrs. Russo." "And please tell him that I may never need it." "I will tell him. And please tell him that the fact that he gave it to me anyway is the most respectful thing any man has ever done for me." Mr. Caruso's face, for one small second, flickered into something close to a smile. "I will tell him, Mrs. Russo." She signed all 7 documents. Mr. Caruso collected them, placed them into his briefcase, stood up, bowed slightly, and left. That evening, at 7, she went upstairs. The door of the blue room on the 3rd floor was closed. She stood outside it for a full minute before she knocked. She did not know, even as her knuckles met the wood, what she was going to say. "Come in." She opened the door. Dante was sitting on the edge of the bed. He was in his undershirt. His hair was uncombed. His face was covered in 2 days of stubble. The tray of eggs Rosa had brought up at lunch was still on the bedside table, untouched. He had not turned on a single light. The room was lit only by the fading winter sun through the window. He looked up when she came in. He did not stand up. Alessia. Dante. She closed the door behind her. She walked to the armchair by the window. She sat down. She crossed her legs. She looked at him across the room. She had thought, on her way up the stairs, that she was going to feel triumphant, that she was going to look at him, here, diminished and unwashed and small, and feel the clean, cold weight of a woman who had won. She did not feel triumphant. She felt instead the way you feel at a funeral for someone you did not much like, but had known your whole life. A kind of heavy, ordinary human regret. "You didn't eat," she said. "No. You should eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." He looked at the tray. He looked back at her. "Alessia." "What?" "I don't know what happens now." "I do." "Tell me." She told him. She told him about the trust, about the power of attorney, about the postnup, about Morelli Ventures LLC, about the non-disclosure he would be signing by the end of the week, about the specific conditions under which he was going to continue to live in this house and continue to carry the Russo name. She told him that he was going to be seen, publicly, exactly as often as she needed him to be seen, that he was going to shake hands at the functions she told him to shake hands at, that he was going to sit at dinners and smile and keep his mouth shut, that he was going to have an allowance, which she would set, and which she would revise, and which he would not argue about, that he was going to have no access to the organization's operations, no access to the accounts, no access to the decisions, no access to anyone in the family without her knowledge, that he was going to, in every sense that mattered, live in her house as a guest, forever, or until she decided otherwise. He listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. When she was done, he said quietly, "Why?" "Why what?" "Why am I still here? Why didn't you—" He gestured, a small, helpless gesture. "Why didn't you let Vincent?" She looked at him. She thought about it. She thought about what Rosa had said in the kitchen at 2 a.m. She thought about the 12 years. She thought about her mother in the hospital. She thought about the bar in Little Italy and the rain in Murray Hill and the funeral home floor. She thought about all of it. Then she said, "Because I am not the kind of woman who has her husband killed, Dante. And because if I did, if I let Vincent do what he offered to do, then I would have to live with that for the rest of my life. And I've done enough living with things this month. I don't need to add another one." "That's it?" "No, that's not it." "What else?" She was quiet for a moment. "The other thing," she said, "is that killing you would let you off. You'd be done. You'd be over. The name would become a legend. Dante Russo, tragically taken, etc. The men would tell stories about you. They'd clean you up. They'd forget the bad parts. I'm not willing to let that happen. I want you alive, Dante. I want you in this house. I want you to see me. Every morning at breakfast and every night at dinner, and every time I have a gala and you walk in behind me and people look past you to get to me, I want you to watch. I want you to watch what a woman actually is. Because you did not know. For 12 years, you did not know. And I am not letting you die without finding out." He looked at the floor. "Alessia." "Yes." "Do you hate me?" She thought about that too. "No," she said. "No? No. Hating you would be giving you more than you earned. I don't hate you, Dante. I don't love you either. Not the way I used to. What I feel about you now is—" She paused, searching for the word. "Disappointed. I am very, very disappointed in you. I think I am going to be disappointed in you for a long time. Maybe for the rest of my life. Maybe that's what marriage is in the end. I don't know. I'm figuring it out." He did not look up. He was crying again, quietly, the way he had cried in the car. She watched him from the armchair by the window, and she did not move. She did not go to him. She had spent 12 years going to him. She was done. After a while, he said, "Can I ask you something?" "One. Did you ever love me?" The question sat in the air between them. She thought about lying. It would have been easier to lie. She was allowed, after what he had done, to say no. She was allowed to say, "No, Dante, I married you because you were useful. I stayed with you because I had built an empire inside your name. I never loved you. I used you the way you used me." She was allowed to say that. He had earned that. But she was not going to build the rest of her life on a lie. "Yes," she said, "I loved you for a long time. I loved you more than you will ever understand, Dante. And that is going to be the part of this you have to live with. Not that I'm still here, not that I won. The part you have to live with every day until you die is that you had a woman who would have died for you in year 3 of your marriage, and you threw her away in year 12 for a girl in a red dress you met at a party. That's what you did, Dante. And no one made you do it. And I am not going to punish you for it, because the punishment is the fact of it. The punishment is that you did it, and you have to live knowing you did it, every day, for the rest of your life, in this house, with me." He put his face in his hands. She stood up. She walked to the door. At the door, she stopped. "Dante." "Yes." "Take a shower. Put on a clean shirt. Come downstairs at 8. Rosa is making dinner." "Alessia." "Yes." "Thank you." She did not answer him. She walked out. She closed the door behind her. She walked down the stairs to the second floor and into her own bedroom, and she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time with her hands in her lap. And she did not cry, and she did not smile, and she did not call Sophia or Vincent or Luca, and she did not do anything at all except sit there and breathe until the winter dark came down outside the window, and Rosa, downstairs, began to set the table for dinner. That was how it began, the new life, the life after. It did not happen all at once. Nothing ever does. The weeks that followed were not cinematic. They were not dramatic. They were small and strange, and full of the specific awkwardness of two people who used to be married and were now something else that had no name. Dante came down to dinner every night. He wore a clean shirt. He did not speak unless spoken to. He ate what Rosa put in front of him. He drank 1 glass of wine, exactly, and never a second. He went to bed at 10. He slept in the blue room on the 3rd floor. He did not come down to Alessia's bedroom. He did not ask to. Some nights she heard him walking the floor in the middle of the night, the slow, heavy step of a man who could not sleep. Some nights she heard him crying. Some nights she heard nothing at all, and those nights were, in their own way, harder. She went to work. That was the surprise of it, for her. The thing she had not prepared for. She had spent 3 weeks, and then 1 terrifying night, and then 1 quiet afternoon in a lawyer's company, building the structure of her new authority. And then, on the Monday after the gathering, she had simply gone to work. She took the office on the 38th floor of the building downtown, the office that had been nominally Dante's and practically nobody's because Dante had never used it. She had the furniture changed. She had the desk repositioned to face the window. She had Sophia come in and help her hang 3 paintings on the walls, paintings Alessia had bought over the years and stored in a closet because Dante had not liked them. She hired a secretary, a young woman named Elena, from Staten Island, 26, sharp, with a finance degree from Baruch and a mother who sewed. She told Elena that she would pay her 3 times what any other boss in the city was paying, and that in exchange, Elena would work harder than she had ever worked in her life, and would tell nobody, ever, what she saw. Elena said yes. Elena turned out to be, within 3 months, the single best hire Alicia had ever made. The men came, one by one. Frankie Morelli from Philadelphia came in February. Old man Pellegrini, despite being 80, flew up from Palm Beach in March. The Genovese underboss came in April and sat across from her in a chair with his hat in his lap and addressed her as Donna Alessia, which was a title that did not technically exist in their world, but which, he informed her gravely, was the title that his wife had told him to use and which he was not going to argue about because his wife was rarely wrong about these things. They brought her problems. They brought her opportunities. They brought her deals. They watched her think. They watched her ask questions. They watched her across the desk on the 38th floor do in 10 minutes what it had taken Dante 10 days to pretend to do, and they went home to their wives and said, each of them in his own language, "Okay, the rumors are true. The woman can work." By summer, there was no longer a question. The Russo organization was hers. Every family on the East Coast knew it. The FBI, though she would not learn this for another year, had quietly closed the file on Dante Russo and opened a new one on Alessia Moretti, and had immediately run into the first of many difficulties they would face in building a case against her, which was that there was no case to build. She did not traffic. She did not extort. She did not kill. She had inherited, through the accident of her competence and the collapse of her husband's pride, an organization that had been, for 2 decades, a loose collection of criminal enterprises. She spent 5 years turning it into something else. She sold off, quietly, every operation she considered dangerous. She shut down the loan sharking. She ended the numbers game. She moved the organization, piece by piece, into the legitimate businesses she had been secretly building on its back for a decade. The construction company became a real construction company. The restaurants became real restaurants. The real estate holdings, which had always been real, became the backbone of a commercial empire that, by the time she was 45, would be valued at something north of $800 million. She ran all of it. She ran all of it from the 38th floor, with Elena in the anteroom, and with Sofia on the phone, and with Vincent Colombo's quiet blessing, and with Luca Bianchi, who had, after all, not left, not gone to Lisbon, but had stayed and taken up a quiet role as her head of security, and who was present in every room she entered and invisible in every room she did not, watching the door. Dante got old. That was the first strange thing. He got old much faster than a man his age should have. His hair went gray in about 18 months. The skin around his eyes grew a permanent gray tone, the way the skin of very tired men does. He stopped going to the gym. He stopped drinking, mostly, maybe 1 glass of wine at dinner, nothing more. And he started reading. That was the other strange thing. He had not been, as long as Alessia had known him, a man who read. He had kept the occasional biography on the nightstand, half finished, as decoration. Now he read constantly. He read history, mostly. Roman history. The fall of empires. The biographies of old kings. She would find him in the library some afternoons, a book on his lap, looking out the window, not reading, just sitting. One night, about 1.5 years after the gathering, he came down to dinner and sat across from her at the long dining table, and halfway through the soup he said, very quietly, "I am reading a book about Marcus Aurelius." Okay. He had a son, Commodus. The son took over after him. The son was a disaster. I know, I took Latin. Right, of course you did. He took a sip of water. He set the glass down carefully. I was thinking, if I had died that night, the night of the Montalto gathering, if Vincent had, if you had said yes, I would have been the father. Dante. I would have been the great boss who was tragically killed by a rival. I would have been a legend. The men would have remembered me as a great man. And you would have had to live in that story, as the grieving widow, as the woman who continued. You would have been carrying my memory around like a heavy bag for the rest of your life. And instead, he stopped. Instead what? Instead, I'm Commodus. I'm alive. I'm the embarrassment. I'm the man everybody knows about and nobody talks about. I'm the husband at your dinners. I'm the ghost in this house. And you don't have to carry anything. You get to just be you. He looked at her. That was generous of you, Alessia. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. I didn't do it to be generous. I know. You did it to destroy me. I know that. I accept that. I'm saying that the result is that you destroyed me and freed yourself at the same time, which is something only a very smart woman could have done, which is something I should have been smart enough to notice 12 years ago. She did not answer. She ate her soup. After a moment, he said, I'm sorry, Alessia. I know. I don't know if that means anything. It means something. It doesn't fix it. No, she said. It doesn't fix it. But it means something. They did not speak again for the rest of the dinner. But he reached across the table at the end and he put his hand over hers for 1 second. He did not hold it. He did not grip it. He just touched it, briefly, the way a man touches a photograph. And then he took his hand back and he stood up and he went upstairs. She sat at the table for a long time after he was gone. Rosa came in, eventually, and sat down across from her. Piccola, Rosa said. Yes, Rosa. He is changing. I know. Does it bother you? Alessia thought about it. No, she said.
It doesn't bother me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do with it, but it doesn't bother me. Piccola, can I say something? You can say anything, Rosa. A man who is finally telling the truth about himself at 43 years old for the first time in his life is a different man than the one who lied to you for 12 years. He is not a better man. He is not a good man. But he is a different man. And different is something. And you are allowed, I am only saying you are allowed, I am not telling you anything else. You are allowed to notice. Alessia looked at her. Rosa. Yes. I'm not going back to him. I'm not asking you to. I'm not going to forgive him. I'm not asking that either. Then what are you asking? Rosa shrugged. It was an old Sicilian shrug, the kind that carried a whole century inside it. I'm not asking anything, Piccola. I'm only saying that the story does not have to end the way you told me it would end. You are allowed to let it go somewhere else. You are allowed, in the end, to do what you want, even if what you want is complicated, even if what you want is not what you thought you would want, even if what you want is not clean. You are 38 years old. You have the rest of your life. Let it be a long life. Let it have many chapters. That is all I am saying. That is all. She got up. She kissed Alessia on the top of the head. She went back to the kitchen. Alessia sat at the long dining table alone in the dim light of the chandelier, and she did not cry, and she did not smile, and she thought, for the first time in a very long time, that her mother, on her deathbed in Bensonhurst 7 years ago, might be less ashamed of her than she had feared. She did not forgive him. She wants you to know that. If this were a neater story, a story more comfortable with itself, the ending would be that she forgave him, and they rebuilt their marriage, and they ruled their empire side by side as equals, and the love that had been fractured became, through struggle and effort, a love even stronger than before. That is the ending you have probably been expecting. That is the ending the story wanted in its shape to have. But that is not what happened. What happened is smaller and messier, and in some ways more interesting. What happened is that she and Dante lived in the same house for the next 15 years. He slept in the blue room on the 3rd floor. She slept in the bedroom on the 2nd floor. He ate breakfast with her most mornings. He ate dinner with her most evenings. He went where she told him to go. He said what she told him to say. He was, in every public sense, her husband. He was, in every private sense, her roommate. He was, slowly, over those 15 years, something like a friend. Not a close friend, not a trusted friend. A friend the way a man is friends with the gardener who has worked his lawn for 20 years. Familiar. Useful. Not to be confused with family. He died, eventually, of a heart attack in the library, reading a book about the Byzantine Empire. He was 58. Alessia was at the office when it happened. She came home to find him in the chair by the window, the book open on his lap, his reading glasses still on his face. Rosa was sitting in the chair across from him. Rosa had closed his eyes. Rosa had not yet called the ambulance. Rosa had wanted Alessia to see him first, the way he was, before the world came in with its paperwork and its noise. Alessia stood in the doorway of the library and looked at him. She did not cry. She had already done her crying for him years ago, in a kitchen at 11:47 at night, and in a guest bathroom at 3 in the morning, and in the arms of the woman in the wool robe in the foyer of this same house. She walked into the library. She sat down in the chair beside him. She looked at his face. She thought about the bar in Little Italy. She thought about the rain in Murray Hill. She thought about the fact that he was dead, and that the man she had married at 24 had been dead for 15 years already, and that this was just the body finally catching up. She thought about the strange, complicated, quiet life they had built in this house after the gathering. Not a marriage, not a friendship, something else, something there was no word for. She put her hand on his hand, which was already cool. "Okay, Dante," she said very softly. "Okay." She sat there for a long moment. Then she stood up. She walked out of the library. She told Rosa to make the call. She went upstairs to her bedroom, and she put on a black dress, and she called Sophia, and she called Vincent, who was, at that point, 79 years old and still sharp as a knife. And she told them, and she sat on the edge of her bed while the ambulance came and took him away. She stayed in the brownstone on East 74th for the rest of her life.
Rosa died 3 years after Dante, 89 years old, in her sleep, in her small room off the kitchen. Alessia buried her next to her own mother in the cemetery in Bensonhurst. It had been, by then, a long time since Alessia had cried for anything. Rosa was the one who broke that streak. Alessia cried at the grave for a full hour, holding on to Sophia's arm, and she was not ashamed of it. She never remarried. She had, over the years, 2 or 3 careful, quiet relationships with men who understood the rules. None of them lasted. None of them were supposed to. She was not a woman built for remarriage. She had done that once. She had learned what she needed to learn. She ran the organization for another 20 years. She retired at 62. She handed the operation over to Elena, who had, by then, been with her for 24 years, and who had become, quietly, without ceremony, the closest thing to a daughter Alessia would ever have. Elena ran it differently than Alessia had. Elena ran it better in some ways. Elena was of a generation that did not remember the old world. That was fine. That was how it was supposed to go. Alessia, in retirement, read a great deal. She traveled. She spent long stretches in the small stone house outside Praiano that Vincent Colombo had given her 40 years earlier, and that she had never, in all that time, needed, but had loved anyway, because the gift had been more important than the use. She sat on the terrace in the mornings and watched the sea come in. She kept a small garden. She learned late in life to cook, which was something Rosa had tried to teach her for decades, and she had never found the time for. She thought about her life sometimes in the quiet. She thought about the brownstone, about the kitchen at 11:47 at night, about the black Valentino, about the ballroom, about the 3 chandeliers, about the moment she had stood up at table 2 and said, "Excuse me," and the world had fallen silent, and she had, for one impossible instant, become a woman she did not know she was capable of being. She thought about Dante, not often, but sometimes. She thought about what she would tell a younger woman, if a younger woman asked her. A woman who had just opened a text message at 11:47 on a Tuesday night and had read it twice, and had set her phone down on the counter very carefully, like it was something that might break. She would tell her this, that the worst thing a man can do to you is not what he does. The worst thing a man can do to you is convince you, over a long period of time, that you are smaller than you are. That is the betrayal that matters. Everything else, the mistresses, the lies, the Camillas and the red dresses, that's just weather. You survive weather. You do not survive being made small. You do not survive letting a man decide, on your behalf, how big you are allowed to be. She would tell her that the answer, when that moment comes, is not to destroy the man. Destroying the man is easy. Destroying the man is what he is afraid of, and so destroying the man is, in some strange way, a gift to him. It lets him die as something. It lets him mean something. The real answer, the hard answer, is to stand up in the middle of the room, in a dress you chose for yourself with pearls your mother gave you, and to say "excuse me" in a voice loud enough to carry, and to lay your evidence on the table, and to become in one single night the woman you were always going to be. And then she would say, "You have to let him live. Not forgive him. Forgiving is for other people, in other stories. You have to let him live. You have to let him live because your whole life is not going to fit inside the shape of your revenge on one man. Your life is bigger than that. Your life is yours. It does not belong to him, and it does not belong to what he did to you, and it does not belong to the night you made him watch. Your life belongs to you. And the way you take it back is not by making him dead. The way you take it back is by living it, fully, for the next 40 years, while he stands behind you and watches." That is the ending she would give to the younger woman, if the younger woman asked. And the younger woman probably would not listen. Women rarely listen, on the first telling, to the older women who have already done what they are about to do. But it would be told anyway. Because the thing about a story like hers is that it belongs to all the women who will, someday, find themselves standing in a cold kitchen at 11:47 at night, reading a text message twice, setting a phone down on a marble counter, and understanding, suddenly, with a clarity that nothing in their lives has prepared them for, that they are about to become someone their husbands never knew existed. And those women, whoever they are, wherever they are, will find their way. The way Alessia found hers. In a black Valentino, in a ballroom full of quiet men, with her mother's pearls at her ears and 3 flash drives in a velvet pouch, and an old Sicilian housekeeper in a brownstone kitchen waiting by the phone for the call that said, simply, "It is done." That is how it ends. Not with a funeral, not with a wedding, not with a reconciliation on a moonlit balcony. With a woman, alone on a terrace in the south of Italy, watching the sea come in, 40 years after the night she stood up at table 2 and understanding, at last, that the hardest thing she ever did was also the best thing she ever did, and that the woman she is now was, in some quiet way, always waiting for her to arrive. She arrived. She is here. The rest, as they say in this life, is just weather.